finished with that first meeting, and now we're going to move right into the city council work session. So let's get started. Let's do the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Eddie, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Frank Banker.
Here.
Councilmember Leslie Notero.
Here.
Councilmember Lloyd Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Shirley.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Zabel.
Here.
Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn.
Here.
Mayor Dave Gaddis.
Here.
City Manager Lynn Reeves.
Here.
And City Attorney Randy Mora.
Present. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to just jump right on into item number 1, which is to discuss the cost effectiveness and expiration date of bid number B22-01, 12th and 13th Street Drainage Modification Project. This was placed on the agenda by Councilmember Roberts, and we have Al Carrier here to speak on this topic.
Good afternoon. I'm Al Carrier with Doolin Associates. We are civil engineers, land surveyors located in Clearwater, Florida. I got a phone call from Councilmember Roberts about last week, I guess, and he had some concerns about the project. We talked about moving forward, with him being comfortable moving forward, and we went over the project in detail. We talked about specifically the storm pipes that I guess we're in question whether or not they really need to be put in, or if it's something we could forego with the project. I really don't have a presentation prepared, but I'm willing to answer any questions you may have. I think the bottom line, if I may, that subdivision is about 73 years old. So we know that the storm pipes in the ground are about 73 years old. We have witnessed at least one location where there's a joint failure. The pipes under the ground where they join together have separated and failed, and creates a pothole in the roadway. So based on my experience, pipes being 70 years old in the road, starting showing signs of failure, it's ready to be replaced. And my opinion, it really doesn't make sense to not replace the pipes at this time through putting all the money back into mill and resurface the roads and putting in the new curbs. So that's my recommendation. And if you have any questions, I'm open.
Well, if it's all right with you, I'll ask you just to stay up there. And we'll see if the council has any questions for you. Council?
Do you have a visual of the layout there? I see you have the plan.
I do, yeah. So,
We're all at a disadvantage.
I would let you review it for a charge.
Yeah, I have my phone.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I got that from Kyle the other day. I was just talking to him, and he provided that. You may need a magnifying glass, so kidding aside, I'm not joking. It's very difficult to read some of the numbers.
Question, Mr. Roberts?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. First, I just want to go back a little bit. My main concern when I brought this up, and please keep in mind that I'm really getting involved in this kind of in the 11th hour, because a lot of this work was done previously before some of us were actually on the council. But what I was the thing that struck me in my head was that if we go through, we spend $700,000 and change on this project, and we ask the question, are some of the scenarios that the citizens are witnessing today, prior to spending that money, are they going to disappear? So that was my biggest concern. So just very quickly a recap. Most of us are probably all familiar with some of the scenarios where we have a high tide and no rain. A high tide and no rain, and some of the roads flood. Now, kudos for the city because they have taken steps already to alleviate some of those problems with the check valves, I think they're called whirlpool valves on there, to when the high tide comes up, those valves close, and they do not allow the salt water from the intercoastal to come on those streets. So that's a good deal. That's a good thing. We also have the infamous high tide and a major rain event. And when that happens, those valves close, and therefore the flooding on the water on the street typically doesn't have anywhere to go then because the valves close and the streets flood. The good thing with that is they flood with fresh water, whereas the other scenario, they flooded with salt water. So it's a little bit better, but the streets are still holding water back. So that's what the citizens are witnessing. And then, of course, when we have a low tide and a rain event, the water actually goes out into the intercoastal, no problem. So that's a good thing. So again, that's what I want to avoid, because I think we as council members, the citizens that live on those streets, they say, great, we just spent $700,000, and we're still witnessing pretty much exactly the same issues we had before. Why did we do that? I don't have a great answer other than, and Al's correct, we had some great conversation the other day concerning that, okay, those pipes have been underground for a while, we're thinking 70 years. You know, you could go online and look, and I looked up this morning actually, and I saw the Army Corps of Engineers have a site, of course, and they were saying most reinforced concrete pipes for stormwater can last over 100 years. Of course, nobody knows for certain, so you do things like video the pipes to see what the condition is. And I think we've done that, right? What kind of views did we see when we did that?
Well, there is a couple pipes that are separated.
Right, so that was a joint problem. The pipe itself didn't fail.
No,
Okay.
joint.
Okay.
Typically, that's what
Yeah, so there's different variables, obviously. You can have failures from the pipe, you can have failures from the actual construction firms that are putting the pipes in, that type of thing. And we don't really know for certain. So that's kind of the big unknown. So I was reviewing a city, I forget exactly what state it was in. They went ahead under similar circumstances. It was interesting, the time frame. They said they had, when they scoped and videoed the pipes, they actually saw dates. So they were 73 years old. But they saw no visible problems. And they went ahead, kind of like what we're talking about, and said, you know what, they're 77 years old. Let's not take the risk. Let's go ahead and take them out. So they took them out, and they have them all stacked up. And there was no problem with the pipes whatsoever. In fact, they used many of them again in other projects, which was kind of interesting on that. So I know we've already done some of these projects, right, on a couple of the streets. What did those pipes look like? Did they crush them when they were taking them out, or did they actually take any of them out in pieces?
My recollection is that they would come out in pieces.
So they were just breaking them because there was no intent to keep them, type of thing. So there's no we really wouldn't know what the quote overall condition those pipes are. Okay. So that's what I really think is the challenge before us, because if in fact they were to last another 40 years, then there is no problem with going ahead and doing, like for example, the one pipe that's failed, where that big pothole is, obviously that's one we need to take out. Is there another, Al, was there another, when you and I were talking, we were kind of talking about, you thought there were two.
There was, well, I went back and looked at Google Earth, so there's one pothole, there are a couple depressions in the roadway.
Was it on that same pipe?
It was in the same, yeah, it was on 12th. There's a couple depressions, but and I can't tell if it's from old work that was done, old construction work that was done, or if the pipe is leaking at the joints.
Okay.
But like I said, in my experience, typically when you have one joint that starts to fail that severely, others are right behind it. And I think we talked about the pipes are elliptical,
Right.
so they're not round pipes. We're proposing to put round pipes in, but they're elliptical. They tend to be more difficult to put in. Constructability, they tend to get misaligned easier than round pipe. So that gives me another indication that it's time.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Me?
and then Frank Baker.
I've got a question about the surveys that's driving the specs for this RFP. When was that survey of this stormwater system completed that were basing the specs and scope of this work?
That was done by your previous engineer of record, Mr. Larry Flutie.
Right.
He had done the watershed management plan, and at that time, it was actually a very good plan. It looked like he'd spent quite a bit of time, and done quite a bit of research.
So
And he prioritized the areas that needed to be done. So the highest priority was the worst condition collection system, the roadway, and we're just now working through that list.
Right, that's my point. So what's the date on that survey?
2016.
2016. So the point I'm trying to get to was that was a different economic climate. Some of the technology and some of the engineering thinking maybe changed a little bit. And if nothing else, our cost-benefit thinking may be changing where we had in the perfect economic climate, and that in 2016 it was economical to go ahead and do that work, and that's how we're approaching it now. But now when we're looking at a $200,000 increase in the repairs at just a pop or a blink of an eye, then maybe we need to start going back and prioritizing it a little bit better, and maybe some things even have to be on condition where it's just not economically feasible now. And if we can just mitigate the problem and wait for conditions to get a little better, either the technology or labor costs to come down a little bit, or the logistics chain to improve a little bit, supply chain economics, that sort of thing to improve a little bit, then maybe we need to back up and rethink this thing before we just arbitrarily say, well, we've got a plan, it's worked okay for the last 5 years, let's just keep going with it. I think, no, maybe the truth has changed here, and we need to do a little more detailed thinking on this thing before we just say, wait the magic wand over it and go on with this thing. The other thing is, never have we ever come up with any metrics for this stuff. It's just a subjective thing. Are we getting better? Yeah, we're kind of getting better, I can tell. What we can tell is not necessarily salt water coming up, because Lynn Reeves has very astutely gone out there and tested the water. So the conditions are improving, but we've got certain expectations. Nobody's ever said, based on the engineering and the scope of work, expect an 80% improvement on this, or expect only, X number of days. We don't have any metrics. How do we know if we're getting better or we're getting our money's worth out of this thing? So I'm just saying we maybe need to just put the blinders on this thing and go back and rethink this before we start keep marching down this road. That's all I have.
Mr. Carrier, do you have anything to respond?
I think maybe you touched on the performance of the system. Keep in mind, you have two outfalls, one on 12th, one on 13th and 8th. Both go through residential homes. The city doesn't have easements over those pipes. And there's structure, there's walls that have been built over those pipes. So that's our constraint right now, those two outfall pipes. But we've increased the pipe sizes up to that 18-inch pipe. One's 18, one's a 12 by 18. But we've increased the capacity of the system by increasing the size of the pipe. And we put a connector pipe in between the two outfalls for redundancy, to try and help alleviate any catastrophic. If one outfall fails for some reason, you at least have another place for the water to go. So we have looked at that. We have tried to do the best we can with the conditions we have to increase the amount of water that we get off the street. But again, the only way to increase the amount of water, the performance of the system, is to really raise the roads and then raise the houses. And that's really not going to happen. So the next best thing is increase the pipe sizes where you can.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is some of that stuff, they are ironclad constraints,
Correct.
right? The outfalls and that sort of thing. So, I mean, are we just throwing money at a problem that doesn't really have an economical solution? Or what can we do where there's a sleep factor, I can sleep with the amount of money we spent for this amount of improvement. Everybody's got a different expectation here.
I guess, I'm trying to follow you. Do you not want to put the pipes in the ground and not do the project at all? Or do you want to not increase the pipe sizes and leave the pipe sizes the same?
No,
size?
I'm thinking we go back, we look at the scope of the project and say, wait a second now, maybe we can bore scope this section again, and if it looks like it's going to last another 5 years, take that portion out of the project and maybe move it ahead. I'm just saying we just maybe a little more surgical precision in defining the project rather than just say, that's the project, take it or leave it. We're going to do it all or nothing.
So I think you could do that, but I don't think 5 years is really a benefit. You're going to be milling and resurfacing the road. The curbs that are out there are also 70 years old. So when you put new curbs in, you expect to get another 50, 60, 70 years out of those. With the mill and resurface, you're probably going to get another 10 years before you even have to touch the road. But the reason why you want to mill and resurface the road now is because the road base is still in decent shape. Once the asphalt starts to decay and water gets to the base, then you have bigger issues. So, in my opinion, you're not going to open that can of worms without fixing what's underneath the ground.
Yeah, no, I think I understand what you're saying, but when I threw out 5 years, I just threw that out arbitrarily. When you talk about resurfacing the road and the curbs, I will go back and say, well, we did a pavement condition indexing of all the roads there, and where does that 12th and 13th Street fall? Because some of those things are being sequenced with these projects. That's because we're doing the stormwater on that road at the time, and it makes sense. If we've torn it up, let's go back and repave it. Well, maybe we need to rethink the paving and curbing too. It all goes together.
Good.
I'm sorry, Mr. Frank Banker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I heard you talking that there may be, and I'm getting broken speech when I'm listening on my phone. But anyway, I heard you're talking about easement problems. So am I under the understanding that you'll be replacing the 15-inch pipe currently with 18-inch pipe going up to that easement issue, which is a 15-inch pipe?
Yes, we're replacing all the pipes except for the outfall pipes between the two houses. All new.
So you'll be putting 18-inch, and then you'll be reducing it to the with a 15-inch coupler for the last maybe 40 feet.
No, we're not going to reduce any pipe sizes.
So you're going to go into the property easement and take that 15-inch pipe out?
So there's two outfalls that go between the properties. The one on 13th to the north, that's an existing 18-inch RCP. And the outfall to the south is a 12 by 18, which is an equivalent 15-inch pipe.
I misunderstood you. So on the other one, you said it's a 15-inch pipe, but it's equivalent to 18-inch?
The 12 by 18 is an equivalent 15-inch RCP. And I see what you're saying. I just saw it. So yes, we're coming into the box. There's a box in the road that takes the water from the upstream collection system and ties it into that 12 by 18 outfall. We did upsize that to an 18-inch because we have the cross connect. We have the equalizer pipe between the two.
When you say 12 by 18, is your inside diameter 18 inches and your length is 12 feet long? Because most pipes are 8 feet long.
No, the 12 by 18 refers to the inside diameter of the pipe. The 12 by 18-inch pipe is elliptical. It's not round.
Okay, so it's not a round pipe. It's okay.
Yep.
So you're not. So what I'm getting at is you're going to have a complete flow of 18-inch from inlet to outlet.
I'm sorry, you broke up. I lost your train of thought.
So we're all on to the understanding, because the street that I live on, we went from 18 inches to the last like 40 feet of 15 inches, which is causing nothing but problems. What I'm getting at here on 12th Street and 13th Street, we're going to have a continuous 18-inch pipe going from inlet water to outlet at the baffles.
So at the very western end, we, in the middle of the street, we have almost identical on 13th and 12th. We have a set of inlets. That's really the first set of inlets in the catchment, that catch rainwater. The pipe coming across the street is a 15-inch. It's an existing 12 by 18, and we're replacing it with a 15-inch round pipe. And as we work our way down the street, we're replacing that with, we upsize it to an 18-inch.
Okay, so at the end of the day, at the discharge, or the baffle discharging the water at even at high tide when it closes, that will be 18 inches, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that going to be double gauge pipe?
The concrete, reinforced concrete pipe in that size is typically about 3 inches in thickness, and it has almost looks like welded wire fabric, a heavy gauge welded wire fabric that runs in the center of that concrete pipe.
Okay. Have we ever discussed putting in a basin, a catch basin of maybe 8,000 gallons? Because I don't agree with your, assessment of raising the roads to get more drainage, because once those baffles are closed, you raise the roads, that water just comes into people's yards, and even worse. But if you put in an 8,000, 12,000 gallon tank with maybe an 8-inch pump to discharge about 60-some thousand gallons an hour, have we ever looked at doing something like that? Because when you're expanding from 15 inches to 18 inches, you're truly only going to give us about 600 gallons more of capacity, which is about the equivalent of one person flushing their pool out. So that's not really that much more water, is what I'm saying, where those pipes are going to hold. But a catch basement with pumps would work. I mean, you have a lot of areas in all over the United States that are flood prone, and even below sea level, pumps do actually work.
A couple things, just for clarification. When I made the comment about raising the road, you would also have to raise the houses to be able to get the water to flow. You've got to be higher than the higher of the high tide for it to work hydraulically. And I guess second, upsizing the pipes, we're not doing that for capacity of holding the water. We upsize the pipe because it allows better flow characteristics, and we can move more water faster through the pipe as conveyance. As far as pumps, you can put in storm pumps, but they're very expensive. They're problematic. We do a lot of work in Madeira Beach. They have two that they just had to replace the pumps, and it was $140,000 for each pump. You can do it. They don't always work. They get clogged from beach balls to mattresses or garbage can lids. A number of things cause problems with those. We could look at that, but I think it's going to be cost prohibitive if you guys are contemplating whether to spend $700,000. I mean, with a pump station, you need millions.
We're contemplating the $700,000 because I think Councilman Lloyd and even our vice mayor are concerned about the price and what are we getting out of this price spending the $700,000. my opinion is if you had to spend 1 million, all right, and it worked, I think everyone would be in agreement, let's spend the extra $300,000 or $500,000. Rather than having something that's, because what they did on my street, I swear it's worse now than it was before they did it, because you went from 18 inches to 15 inches. You never put a breather pipe in there to let the water out. Now you got an air blockage, in my opinion, not letting the water out.
Councilmember Sable?
Yeah, it's gonna sound a little bit evil, but we're an island. There's no way you're gonna run from this. And when I looked at that estimate, reviewed the RFP, nowhere did I see them saying, this'll fix it. Upon completion of this, that road will be dry. That road will be safe from water for the next 20, 30 years. I'm not against repairs to any existing system. If it's broke, we fix it. But we're at a problem here where, I believe it was Councilman Gunn and Councilman Roberts explained it about you have the various combinations, high tide, low tide, rain, no rain. What I do want to hear from is the city manager. He's our chief executive officer. He does day to day to day. As far as knowledge, he's kind of sitting corporate knowledge. And I want to hear from him. Will this fix it, or are we just chasing the wind here?
Well, excuse me, Mayor and Council, it was never meant to be a fix. It was to prevent high tide from coming back in. It was to get a little more capacity in the pipes because they were 70 plus years old. Having lived on 8th Street for 20 some years, I've seen the water there after this, and I guess Councilmember Bankert, I disagree with you, but that's just my opinion because it was a lot higher than it is now. And that was because we didn't have the cross pipes going from 7th and 8th Street. But it's not an end-all be-all. It was never meant to be. It was meant to try to stop things like a king tide coming up and that water ended up in the street. If it comes a downpour, you're going to have water until the capacity of the pipe is full. But at least there's somewhere for it to go, and as soon as the tide goes down, it will drop pretty quickly. We put backflows on 12th and 13th already. City staff did that probably a year ago. And the water level is not as it was. And I know Councilmember Roberts talked to a couple people over there, and they told him it was better. So, and I've heard that from a lot of residents.
Are any houses or yards or anything in imminent danger right now?
Well, if you're gonna get some water in your yard, that's just normal.
I'm assuming fresh water, salt water?
Fresh water. You know, I had people telling me it was salt water, and I told them, no, it's not salt water. So we went and got a test kit, and I went out and took a saltwater sample from the Intercoastal. I took a sample from the street after, and got those. And then I took a sample of the water coming out of your faucet. And actually the water in the street wasn't much difference from the water that's coming out of your faucet from a rainstorm. So it was not salt water backing up into the street. You know, I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, that's salt water. No, it's not salt water. And like I said before, it's not the fix. You live on an island, you got water on both sides. The only thing you can really do, as Al said, is raise the island. You're not going to fix it, you know, entirely. And you know, 12th and 13th Street, I don't know if there's anyone here from there, but you could, a lot of times, there was a lot of water on that street with the high tide before we put those check valves on.
Was there water today?
Huh?
Was there water on the street today?
Not to my knowledge.
Because Harrison was covered with water, so it just.
But there's no check valve.
Right, but I'm just saying, so it's working, you know, Harrison, which never floods, is
Right.
flooded today, so.
So, you know, that's why we started putting the check valves in. And we did a lot of evaluation with those, because I talked to other cities that said they started using what they call a duck bill. It's basically a thing, piece of plastic, that sucks closed. Well, after it gets a bunch of oysters on it, it won't close. So we did a lot of research, and these valves are something we found. We talked to other cities that have been using them, Longboat Key and stuff, and I think it's been very good at stopping the high tides and stuff.
Thank you. Before we go back around, does anyone else have any questions? Okay, I have a couple. First off, the joints that are broken. How do you repair the joint? Does it require pipe replacement?
Probably, you have to dig the road up. I will tell you that a comment was made at the meeting about slip line. Well, to slip line, the amount of feet we have is almost $400,000. Right now, it's $200 a linear foot plus $10.50 for what they call cleaning and hydraulic inspection. So, I mean, we're talking double the price.
And those joints that are broken, are they under the street currently?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Mr. Carrier, would you agree with that it requires pipe replacement to repair the joints?
Yeah, usually if you have a point repair where you fix the joint, you got to dig up everything around that pipe to get access to it. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll fill the void with hydraulic cement, they'll wrap it with a Verify, a filter fabric, which keeps the soil from going back in the pipe, and they usually band it. Once all that's done, they get to recompact it, then you get to rebuild the road. It's usually not for a fix per se, but it's a point repair and a more emergency Band-Aid, if you will. Like I mentioned before, usually if you have one pipe joint that's leaking or something's wrong, there's some sort of structural failure, usually it's an indication that there's other failures in that system. You just haven't seen them yet.
Okay, and let's just say that we snapped our fingers and the streets and the homes are now 5 feet higher. The check valves are still going to do the same job. If we get rain while a check valve is stopped or closed, we're still going to have water backed up. Is that correct?
From a rainstorm, yes.
From a rainstorm?
At some point, depending on how much it is. If it's
Because it's still going out the same pipe that
Right.
we will be using today. Is that right?
But if you're 5 feet higher, you probably don't need the check valves because you're not going to get a tide that's going to be 5 feet high.
Okay.
Right? Most high tides are 0.5, maybe 1.5 at a king tide. So you have the hydraulic pressure, hydraulic head to push that water out that system.
That would be a massive.
That would be we wouldn't be on the island.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, next round, does anyone have any more questions?
Yeah, I do. Have we run cameras down all the pipes to see where we stand with failure?
You mean the other streets? Not.
No, I'm just talking about.
We've had some cameras in there. We'll have to.
On both 12 and 13?
Yeah. Because we've had cameras on some other streets where we had to, as an example, the only thing you can do between two houses, unfortunately, you can't dig the pipe up. You got to slip line it. That's all you can do. And we've had to do that in a few places in the city also.
And as far as the streets and the guttering goes, that's slated to be repaired no matter what we do. Is that
Right.
correct?
But let me just say, if you repair, if we find we have 2 sections that need replaced and our asphalt repairs only going to last 10 years, right? Because we're just trying to get another 10 years out of this base material that's in place. Then that seems like a logical fix. Let's just fix these 2 sleeve areas and, that's what I'm saying. The camera, running the camera down these pipes is probably more important than we're not putting as much importance on that as there is, because there may be, what I'm hearing you say is that the chances of repaving these roads in 10 years are pretty likely. So if we can get another 10 years out of the pipe, then, and we just do a few repairs, then do the few repairs, go ahead and, mill and top over the existing base material and get our 10 years out of it.
So if we did let's just say we went into repair mode instead of replace mode, what does that encompass?
Well, my personal opinion is you're gonna gamble, and the other thing I would do, regardless if you go into repair or replace, I would replace all the stormwater inlets, because when we had the hurricane in 17, because they have they have an opening about this wide, about like that, and guess what was in them? Nothing but garbage. So what we've done is we've replaced those with grates type stormwater inlets. So that stuff is captured. So regardless, if you say, let's just dig up the road and fix a couple pipes, I would still tell you to replace all of the inlets.
So what I'm looking for is consensus for our next meeting. I'd like to know where everyone's thinking right now, what the direction is with this conversation. Do we shut it down and reinvestigate, or do we move forward with it?
I'd like to basically reinvestigate. I like the point, look, the inlets and repair what is damaged. If you got damaged stuff, let's go back, we fix it, we slip it. Not the whole range, just what is broken right now. And then we can reevaluate. Potentially, look, we have the money, but we don't spend it needlessly. We can keep the money set aside later for any other potential damage, maybe potential ideas such as what Councilman Bank was talking about, a box, that could be investigated, but down the line. That's more of a preventative vice, a corrective measure. I want to get at the corrective stuff.
Okay. Before I call on everyone else, Mr. Baker, would you like to weigh in on this?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Just a comment. The pump idea, we looked at that on Belle Isle. It doesn't work, and you're gonna have to, where are you gonna put this pump between the houses on 12th and 13th Street? Where are you gonna put it? We don't own any property there. If it was in 7th Street, put it in the park. But 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 16th's got a park. 17th and 18th, where are you gonna put the pump? Are you gonna put a pump, try to go tell the homeowner you're gonna put a pump in his backyard? I don't think that's your intent.
Councilmember Shirley?
So yeah, I'm in favor of doing a little more investigation and seeing if there's a possible repair to just, because it doesn't make sense to remove pipe that may be okay to replace it with the same style pipe.
Leslie Nataro?
I mean, it's just putting Band-Aids on it. I think fixing it, taking a more major step is more appropriate.
Lloyd Roberts?
First, I just wanted to clarify from Mr. Carrier, I don't think he was recommending to repair the joint in the process that he was describing as a permanent fix. So if we have a joint problem where we're seeing those potholes, his recommendation is we go in for that particular pipe, take that out, replace it with a new pipe, and go forward.
Depending on the length of the pipe, the length of section you got to pull out.
Right.
Sometimes they call it diapering, sometimes it's better just to diaper that entire joint.
Okay.
If the integrity of the pipe's not there, you want to diaper it in concrete, they call it, or blanket it in concrete to strengthen the pipe again.
So my recommendation at this point would be to not go forward with the project as it's stated today, but I think it makes sense to go in there and identify maybe the one or two areas that have failed from a joint standpoint, and go ahead and take those pipes out and replace them. That would require another bid, design, obviously. All of the gutters on those two streets to be replaced as well, and the pavement. Now, somebody had asked about, so there's 3 actual streets involved there. We have 12th Street, we have 13th Street, and we have Bay. Is that correct? Yes. Right. So 12th Street is actually in the category, from a scoring standpoint, that shows it's in the worst category. So it definitely needs to be replaced. Bay is in the second worst category. So that would not be an issue, I don't think. On the other hand, 13 scored very well. However, from a project standpoint, because it's basically a U street in there, it makes sense to go ahead if we're doing those other 2 streets. In my opinion, it would make sense to go ahead and proceed to do all 3, even though somebody might say, well, gee whiz, why'd you do that street? My street's in worse condition than that street.
You're referring to asphalt and gutter.
Correct. So I believe, going ahead now and just repairing, again, it would require a new design to say, this is what we're going to do from a stormwater standpoint, and this is what we're going to do with the gutters and the street. That would be a total new RFP for the contractors to bid on, and then we would move on with that.
Councilmember Gunn?
I've pretty much stated my position that more of a surgical approach to this thing, fix the stuff that's broken. If it's not broken, don't fix it. I'm more of an on-condition person. I would like to go back and look at the Flutie report, if nothing else, to look at the assumptions that are still good assumptions and things that have changed. If we need to rethink stuff. And I think, the truth has changed. I think we need to take a step back and think about things in a different way these days. And maybe there's a different way of looking at these different line items. We looked at a way to prioritize flooding. That was your concern, and we prioritized them 3 different ways. One was somebody's home was being damaged. One was the street was impassable, and the third was there was some flooding, but it was going in 3 hours or something. I don't even remember. So, these things were prioritized that way, and now it's time to maybe back up, and if we do a surgical approach and pick and choose certain projects, the technology's improved, we can maybe more isolate the really broken and damaged places, surgically fix it, and while we're mobilized, we do the same thing in the different areas. Rather than going from one street to the next, the entire project, we do all the grades together, we do certain things together. I'm for waiting. I'd like to rethink this thing.
Mr. Reeves, are there any other streets that are in dire need right now? Any other areas in Bel Air Beach that are in worse condition than 12th and 13th?
I don't have the PCI in front of me, but I want to say 17th and 18th is an issue. We did put a valve in the outfall of that on 18th Street. But even going forward, I would still replace all the inlets regardless.
Is this a similar conversation?
Pardon?
17th and 18th, is this the same conversation?
Yeah, I mean,
It's just that they're not adjoining.
right. We can go, we can hire the company that does our cameraing for us and just go camera everything if that's what you want to do. I mean, we do have that funding in the stormwater because that state mandated requirement for the stormwater, we did that in-house. So we didn't go to a consultant to spend that. So there's money there that we can go ahead and do that. And, but this is going to take, complete redesign.
Well, I have a question. If we scope the pipes and realize that it's cataclysmic, then we have a winning bid on the this project. Is that correct?
No.
Or are we about to lose it?
We're about to lose.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but June 4th, it's no good.
So right now, what I'm hearing is, I believe that the council has the feeling that we should wait, further investigate, and then requote. You know what I'm hearing? Okay. Mr. Carey, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
I appreciate everybody's input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me get this straight right quick. So at the next meeting, we have to officially vote this down. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll bring something that we rejected a bit,
Okay.
even though it'll be past the date anyway,
Okay, all right.
just to keep our records straight.
Okay, now we're up to item 2, which is discuss Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission's notice of intent to revoke the city's waterway marker permit letter regarding buoys. So we all kind of know what's happened and where we stand today. And we have a map, a proposal of what we would possibly like to do. Do I have any comments from the council?
I guess I shared this with Lynn, and I'm just having a real struggle with the boat zones. I know from what Lynn explained, we have to do it, but as soon as we identify boat zones, you know where everyone's going to be parking their boat on Saturday and Sunday afternoon, right? Then when aware of, these sandbars that, I'll just use the one at John's Pass as a great example. That's what's going to happen on Bel Air Beach. So thank you for whoever the road council member was that created this mess. This is a problem. Is there any way around this having to name these boat zones? I'm going to defer to the attorney.
Though I'm getting up to speed on the issues, I am familiar with FWC's requirements on your ordinances governing buoys. They've issued a letter telling you come in compliance with their administrative codes and statutes in the next 30 days, which actually much sooner than 30 days from today. You have the option of designating areas as no vessel areas, and I understand I'm wading, no pun intended, wading in the waters that have likely been navigated among you as to whether you wish to prohibit boats altogether, make it non-motorized vessels only, but you do have some leeway in what you designated if it is the collective will to say that it is an altogether no motorized boat zone. That ability exists, you have that authority. If you're trying to balance the wheres and hows of it, I have to personally get more acquainted and would certainly defer to your manager in that regard as to what exists presently and the regions and zones you're referring to.
Yeah, what we had before was a no-wake zone. It worked perfectly. Boats didn't travel in, but if they did want to come ashore to pick someone up, they did and got out of the no-wake zone. People who weren't driving up and down the no-wake zone was not an issue. I've lived on this beach for 22 years and never seen a problem with boats in the no-wake zone. Now all of a sudden we've got to revamp the entire beach and people are going to be partying behind Leslie's house now. So I wouldn't be happy if I lived directly on the beach.
And for what it's worth, you're not the only coastal community that's going through this. Not even in Pinellas County. I think some of this may have spurred some attention in other areas in the county as well. I was on a call with the 5 people who are tasked with administering this particular program and talking through, and they said, a lot of this is responsive and reactive, and so it is entirely possible for a community to have, but our buoy has said this for 20 years, and then say, well, our code has said this for 18, how didn't we know? Well, until we're notified, they're not patrolling all of the waters looking at every buoy, and it is largely a reactive enforcement mechanism. Compliance, I should say, not enforcement.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I didn't know, look, I'm not a voter, but we have a lot of voters here, and one of the biggest concerns was look, I'd like to have the ability to drive in, grab grandkids, kids, whatever, then go back out to sea. As a swimmer, I'm not a big fan of boats, but if they're allowed to come in, slowly, again, no wake, and then pick up everybody that proceed out without creating, a standing parking lot. I think, to me, that's a good solution. I just didn't know that you were already allowed to do this. I don't see why we're reinventing everything now at this point. As long as our boaters are allowed to come in, drop off, pick off, and, head back out. What I am concerned about, and this is strictly for military, but if you got something that's been hanging on since October 21st, and nothing's been done on it, that's upsetting. You can't be doing that. And I want to figure out, going forward, what are we going to do to handle Florida Fish and Wildlife? And this is way above my head. This is Attorney Todd. What are our options? At least we should have a series of options to look at and vote upon, so we can, in a timely manner, close this issue with them. It's open. We gotta close it out.
Yes, and I think that's what the function of the discussion this evening is. I will tell you that as it relates to handling state agencies, our options are often limited as they are, the parent relative to us in the way of the Federalist hierarchy. And so our options become more limited as we start trying to dictate how those superior agencies function.
As far as this boat zone goes, what exactly does this mean? Can you spell it out for us?
Well, what FWC, we can do vessel exclusion, we can do swim zones, and that's kind of where we had a public meeting to discuss this. And, a few people talked about putting a boat zone where a boat could drive into the shore, place it, the rest of the beach is swim zone, okay? The issue is, the buoy issue came about because of a buoy issue in Bel Air Shore, okay? And trying to, Bel Air Shores, I don't think they really have any interest in the buoys, or if they do, they haven't told me that.
So they don't have any buoys, right?
They got one.
Okay.
20-some years ago, the city of Bel Air Beach and them went together. They paid for their buoys, we paid for our buoys. Okay. When we went to update the permit, the state said our buoys were fine, their buoys were gone, so they were taken off the permit. And there was no problem with having an idle no wake zone. But what brought this to a head was the fact that there was a lot of conversation back and forth with different people at FWC and trying to compare us to Indian Rocks or Clearwater or whatever. And so they decided to look at our ordinance. Well, our ordinance doesn't meet the current statutes. So their position is now, as they said in the letter, either take the buoys out or create a swim zone or something, vessel no exclusion zone. And that's pretty much what the letter states. If our buoys wouldn't have been brought into it, the buoys could have stayed where they were, they would have come here and looked at our ordinance. But because it was brought to their attention, they went and looked at our ordinance. And that's what they do with the other cities. They're not going to go, they only have a few people up there. They're not going to go door to door and say, hey, your ordinance, they don't have the people to do that. And so at this point, we have to give them a plan of what we're going to do. Or we have to, if we're not going to do anything, then they're telling us to take the buoys out there or revoke our permit.
And regardless of the reasoning that we're being heavily scrutinized, we're still out of compliance and have been for years.
Right.
Now,
What is the what are the options according to this code? Do we know? I mean, because I see two options, and that is swim zone or boat zone.
Well, there's some others like vessel exclusion zone, which is not a swim zone. I probably should have brought all that data with me, but we had a complete list of everything they said we could do or couldn't do. You know, you could have a canoe, but you can't have a motorboat, no motorized boats. But because we don't qualify for anything else, like an idle wake zone, we don't have a boat ramp within 500 feet, we don't have a gas station within 500 feet. Those are stipulations. But if you don't have, this is all you can be.
So
That's it.
compare these two boat zones to what we have today. What's the difference?
Principally, the main difference is your present operation of the idle wake zone, where you're okay with vessels, motorized vessels passing through at a low speed. It's either they're allowed in or they're not. You're sort of left with this binary choice, whereas you've existed in the gray space of the Venn diagram. You're now having to say either we're having swimmers only or we're having vessels, and if a vessel can come in, that means it has all the rights of being in that area, which the way you see this in some parts on Clearwater Beach. Jet skis come in and out of here, everybody stay on this side of the boat. And so that it's the mutually exclusive use issue. Right now you have parallel uses that can't necessarily be parallel. You do have options. Again, non-motorized vessels are permitted. Okay, we're okay with kayaks and paddle boards, but we don't really want, jet skis and wake boats without boarding and all that.
Right, so, guys, just bear with me for a couple of seconds. If this entire area was boat zone, if everything on this map was boat zone, would it, and let's just say you take the swimmers completely out of the picture, would it be exactly the same as what we have today or not?
You wouldn't have any buoys.
So you've got a boat zone, you can't have, okay, I understand.
So-
All right.
You said you wouldn't have a buoy?
You can't have buoys out there. It's calling it a boat zone.
It'd be considered open water for power
Right.
purposes.
Yeah,
I
so
could
you might
drive
as well
full
just-
speed at the sand level.
You might as well just
Warp speed
take the,
Yep.
in the boat zone?
So,
Yeah.
so just a thought experiment here. If you left it as it was, you complied, and the entire thing was a swim zone, boats can still come through at,
no,
they're completely excluded.
yes.
So then the other options are you create boat zones or you pull all the boats. And you've already done the economics on that. What's it called? To pull them all or to put in the
Well,
forest?
pulling them, I haven't got we're trying to get some numbers on what this would cost us.
However, if you pull all the buoys, now you're opening yourself up for boats to come in and
Right.
anchor.
And at speed. And again,
Yes,
at least I'll give you my experience. If there are no buoys, if that's a boat zone, you are legally permitted to haul your ass full speed at sand. I'm
See?
talking jet skis, water skis, anything.
Yeah, and, okay, so the whole purpose of this design was for perception. It was to show, if you're in a boat and you're flying, 100 yards offshore, maybe 200 yards, and you see this line of buoys, it looks like a straight line, and it says stay out. And then for the people that live here, they would know where they could come in and pick up children, family, whatever, their dog, and then leave. One thing that we never discussed was somebody just drop an anchor in this little square here and hanging out all day. That's something that never came up during that meeting.
We're pulling a boat right on the beach.
Right. There's one
Out
idea, and again, you really got to be the ancient mariner, and Glenn, you know exactly what I'm talking about now. Something called a range marker. A range marker is not a buoy. A range marker is kept on land. We service it. What a range marker is, and unfortunately, Frank, you'd have to look this one up. You have two items. For example,
you have a lower and a higher. These are on land, they're separated by about 10 feet. And to come in, you have to be what they call on the range, which means physically you're looking at an alignment of the two items. If you see that, you are on the range, you're allowed to come in. If they're broken, there's a separation, you are not on the range. You got to turn to again be on the range. They're not buoys, they're not maintenance items. We do, these are on land. So you can look those up, they're range markers.
I understand where you're coming from, however, I don't think Joe Drunky and his boat's gonna care.
And that's the problem. Not everybody's responsible about it.
There's less and less of them now.
Mr. Mayor?
So if we did.
Hold on 1 second. Frank Baker?
Yeah. We have now a city attorney that represents a city that has no wake, idle speed buoys in it. And I believe a councilwoman said the council person that addressed this isn't a problem or whatever. I'll take full credit in that because I didn't really put us into a problem. Just for the record, this was changed in 2020. I didn't take the seat till 2022 or 2021, I'm sorry. All right. We should have never changed this amended, the first permit that was in the works for 20-some years. We should have abided by the permit and replaced those buoys as so stated, as we were responsible for under the permit direction. Bel Air Beach was responsible to replace Bel Air Shores buoys. But that all said, we now have an attorney that represents a city that has the same buoys markers that we have right now. Why are we not fighting FWC? I believe Article 3 of our Constitution still is valid about special laws prohibited. When a state agency tries to attack a city, town, or person, that is completely a violation of our rights in Article 12. I can go on and on from Article 2, the preamble of our Constitution, but simply, there's a buoy right now in Bel Air Shores, okay? And no one's even addressing that. So FWC just wants a pound of flesh, in my opinion. I think we should fight this. We should leave the buoys there, as they're right now, and take them to court. I think they would back down.
Mike Saban.
Okay, Blank, now, I understand you just came here, but you're the only attorney in this room. Give me a real big ballpark. How much is it gonna cost in time and cost to, quote, fight this? And what's the likely result if we try tilting at windmills?
I commend this community for its baptism by fire. With all respect to the council member, I'm not a policymaker in any community I serve in. I do not administer the codes to the extent I'm a city attorney in another community that may have buoys in another, in a similar or comparable position that is that city's, for that city to resolve. And as much as I've been advised or involved in that process, it's my understanding this was brought to that city's attention in the last 45 days, and they had, when I referenced a call, it was in connection with another jurisdiction, and their response was, okay, just tell us what we got to do to come in compliance, and they're amending their ordinance, and they're on a 90 to 120 day timeline to try and modernize their code accordingly and determine what best suits their community. So they are not taking an adversarial stance with FWC. I know that doesn't answer the narrow question you gave me, but I think that context is important. The question you gave me was, what would it cost us to fight this? I don't know, only because I've not researched what defensible position your community has. I appreciate and am a strong proponent of home rule and your ability to self-legislate and self-govern. And the Florida Administrative Code that is at issue specifically contemplates your ability to make certain regulations in this sphere, but to do so in a manner that complies with state statute and state administrative code. The FWC is the body that is functionally preempted to the regulation of Florida's waters and environmental waterways, and so our authority is, I wouldn't say lacking, but certainly mitigated in this sphere. Litigation is never cheap. your results are never certain. I would feign to put a dollar amount on anything at this point. You'd be going on the offensive, so you're not having insurance coverage or anything of the like where you might see that in a personal injury context or other land use disputes. The ability to succeed in litigation against FWC on this issue, I would put it less than 50-50 without having analyzed it just based on their rulemaking authority, and also the time with which this is not a new issue, but rather a new issue that they've become aware of. And you'll come, the discovery process will reveal how they became aware, on what timeline, and how soon they sought, compliance from this entity.
I'd like to remind everyone also that there was a public meeting held concerning this, and this is what, even though it wasn't a large group, there didn't seem to be a lot of interest in this topic, but for the people that were there, this is what they came up with. And I would advise each of you to at least consider their wishes, because they put us here, but on the other hand, I think we owe it to at least to bring this up for a vote, and decide from there, because I don't really see a quick fix on this, and we're running out of time.
Can I ask a question regarding the location of the boat zones? Is it required to have two? Is there some?
No, there's no requirement. It was just at the public meeting, there was concern that you had to have centralized locations.
Originally, there were 3.
There were 3, yeah.
And that was what the beach access, well, we have 4 that are beach access crossover, walkovers, it looks like. Why not look to Morgan Street where you can, if you're really just coming to pick someone up, you need to be dropped off, right? So at least a vehicle can pull in and, I'm kind of trying to figure out why we have boat zones like behind, townhouses and things such as that.
Well, the reason there's more swimmers at Morgan Street, and the discussion at the public meeting was, you don't want to have boats coming into Morgan, because that was one that we had. And we, and I understand it, there's more swimmers there.
And then I have another kind of stupid, but on that point is like, why not go to the south or the north end of the beach altogether?
So the purpose of where these are located on the map was to give everyone in Bel Air Beach equal access, to split it up. So, because if you live, let's just say you only did Morgan, and you live in the south, well, that's a long way to walk to go meet Daddy with his boat. Or or let's say you put them all the way on the ends, and you live right in the middle, and you want to take one of those accesses, it's still a hike. Not for everyone, but for some people it is. That's how this came out, and it was a consensus. It was a lot of back and forth and trying to come up with something that was acceptable for everyone. I can't say that this is 100% the best plan, but it was, as far as we could tell, the very best option to at least appease the boaters and also try to protect the public and our beaches. Glenn, go ahead.
So to put this into perspective, I was at that meeting, a number of council members, almost outnumbered the number of people came in and said they wanted a boat zone. Okay. Now, my observation is, are you trying to fix something that's not really broken? People who are running around in boats, they're not necessarily coming in the beach to pick people up. They're coming into the beach to party, get off the boat and party. And I think if you create these boat zones, guess what? You're not going to have a lot of people picking people up off the beach. You're going to, all these boat zones are going to be crowded with people coming in to anchor their boat, stand in the water, waist deep, and drink beer. That's what you're creating here. You're basically creating a what's the term, inviting nuisance or something like that, an attractive nuisance, because the people aren't going to be coming in their boats to pick people up. Maybe onesies, twosies, but I'll tell you what, they are gonna be flocking to these boats. Once they, the work gets on the street, and you've got a boat zone, guess what's gonna be pulling in there? And you're gonna be able to walk from the beach out to those buoys, deck to deck on these boats.
So I have a question for you. What's preventing people from docking or dropping anchor on Miller Shore today?
The way it is now, that you can come through those buoys, is that correct?
Yeah,
There
and
are
there's
no
nothing
buoys
stopping them.
Yeah, so, well, those buoys are there, right?
No. So my question is I see a line of buoys. Am I going to go there, or am I going to go where there's no buoys at all? Because is it going to be? Are they going to be marked so obvious that
That was not
it's
the
a
intent.
boat magnet?
No, it's, we would have to re-sticker the buoys that are out there, swim zone. And I
And
think I
what
said,
happens at these buoys? What happens at these buoys? If that says swim zone, what does this say?
well, there's not a second buoy there. The only place that it would be a boat zone is the interior buoys, because I'm not advocating putting a big sign up and say, this is a boat zone. But
Since it's voted on in a public meeting, is why, then it's gonna be on the street, right? That's my only concern.
I don't know that, because just like the mayor said, I'm looking down this strip here, and those are gonna say swim zone on them. You know, what are the odds? And realistically, I think all of us know that you can't control everything. And, you know, Glenn may bring his boat over and go to decide he wants to come in at Morgan Park. Hey, who's gonna go?
Let me take this a step
Pick it
further.
on you, Glenn.
In today, right now, the way we are out of compliance, is there anything preventing a boat from coming and anchoring and sitting there
No,
hanging out?
no. It says idle, no wake zone. That's all it says.
Wake zones, you can go anywhere you want, as long as you're below the posted speed. And it's my comment, I mean, thank you for bringing that up about the community. First, foremost, always, we're not the ones to really push direction. I mean, the citizens are. You know, they go through us, obviously. We went out there, we went door to door to door to door, and they came up with this compromise. That was a lot of work, a lot of consideration for voters, non-voters. My personal thought now, after hearing that, is going forward with this, because I'm assuming right now, I want to verify that this plan will put us in compliance with FWC. It'll close the item, and we can proceed forward with other pressing matters of the city.
That is correct. I will say, just for the benefit of all present, the final paragraph of the FWC letter that prompts this discussion is, since a significant amount of time has passed without these problems being addressed, FWC intends to revoke the permit that authorizes the current 20 Florida Uniform Waterway markers. To avoid revocation, and I'm skipping over a little bit, to avoid revocation, please provide FWC with a corrective action plan that addresses these issues within 30 days of receiving this letter. Submission of the plan will toll the revocation process while staff reviews the plan. If the permit is revoked, Bel Air Beach will be required to remove the markers from the waters of the state at its own expense. Failing to remove them is another violation of the law, subject to, and they give you their citations. So what you're looking for tonight is, you're not even, obviously you're at a workshop, you're not taking official action. You're giving general direction, say this is the plan. And if this is the plan or some other formulation of it, we will go to FWC and say, hey, good news, we've got a plan. And we're working through it, you guys look at it, we'll fine tune the P's and Q's and I's and G's of it all with all the attorneys. But it stops the clock on needing to pull them and any kind of penalties they may otherwise impose, and allows you to get the process going to transition to your brighter, newer future on the waterway, whatever that may look like for you folks.
Because it'll take 2 months, 2 ordinance readings. Plus, we have to send the proposed ordinance, which I did talk to him about that. Instead of using coordinates, we're just going to use, and they're fine with this as an example, the swim zone down here would be, in the ordinance, would be 100 feet north of 19th Street to 24th Street.
And again, what this does, and Mariner again, right now, you can take a boat anywhere on that beach. We implement this, you took that entire beach open to boaters, you're now into 2 small lanes.
Right.
And that's okay, because everything else is no boats at all, only swim.
Right.
And again, this is what the citizens came up with, for taking the citizens.
And all we'll be doing is, the buoys that are there, all we'll be doing is changing the stickers. We'll hire somebody to go out and put swim zone.
The kayak, the set of stickers,
Yeah.
and an
So which ones are there right now?
Yeah.
It's that weight zone.
It says
One.
no way.
Right there, right?
Yeah.
You're just adding the interior buoys.
But the mindset of a boater is right now, he sees a buoy, and he's probably not gonna come in.
Where's that?
So what's changing? Nothing. If you go to a no swim zone, he doesn't realize there's any difference. What's keeping him out right now is a
Well,
But as soon as you start saying, hey, we got a boat zone for you, come on in, welcome.
if they really know their law, they can
You wanna
come in
advertise
anywhere.
that? I don't think you do.
Well, I guess once, if they're set up this way and we decide it doesn't work, it can be removed.
Yeah.
Just make it all. swim.
Only 4 buoys.
Yeah, you're not, I think the discussion we had at there weren't a lot of people, but there were people here. And the biggest issue, because initially we had 2 scenarios, one with 4 boat zones and one with 3. But the end theory was just do a couple and split them. And that's what we did here. And like you said, Mayor, if I'm looking at this and it says no swim here, no swim here, no swim here, or swim zone,
You could assume that it's all.
you're gonna assume you can't be in there.
This is our hope, is that we're going to just keep driving past it.
That's it. Technically.
Because I don't get near those buoys. I'm always afraid someone is going to be out kayak or they're swimming, because you've always got that one guy like Mike Sable. To swim way
Or the
out.
jet
It's good for
skier.
the rain.
That's right.
Beyond
I get up
buoys,
and go
and you
drive
see them
slow.
out there, you're like, what is that?
But right, yeah, if they do their regs, they can drive anywhere they want with their boats currently.
So what I'm hearing is, we need to do something. This is an action item we need to take care of tonight, just to
I just need the
authorize
consensus.
you to submit the plan, and then whenever the time comes, we have to do an ordinance anyway to pass
2
this.
readings, yeah.
So this at least gets the ball rolling and gets them off our backs.
Right.
Is everybody okay with that?
Frank Baker.
Frank?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I heard our attorney say that there was a town that received a notice around 45 days ago about addressing their buoys. These permits are granted for 3 years, and then they have to be reviewed every 3 years. So I'm not sure if that town's permit is up for renewal right now or review, but our permit is not renewable until next year. There's 3 emails going back and forth to FWC from 2019 to 2020 asking what the verbiage is that we're requesting on the buoys. Each time we ask idle speed, no wake in each of those emails. FWC then approves a permit specifying the coordinates of 20 markers, and each marker has a coordinates reference, idle speed, no wake on the printed or on the buoys. That said, Mr. Moore could go into court tomorrow morning for about $300 in his time, okay, and file a motion to cease and desist this letter and keep that permit in effect till at least the end of next year. That would be the easiest, fastest solution here, and I think FWC would back down quickly.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, I'd like to make at least a thought here is removing councilmen from any action in this letter, take him totally out of the loop, let it go to where it should be, that's the city manager and city attorney, to handle any further actions and any letters or any actions at all on this. Again, is that possible at this point in time?
I don't think we have any capacity to control the freedoms of anyone on this council.
Okay, I understand.
What I'm looking for is just a consensus. If you want us to use this plan, we'll get with Randy, we'll get an ordinance drafted, and send that to them and say, here's our plan.
All right, let's start with Mr. Bankert. Are you okay with at least submitting this to FWC and buying some time?
Me, I'm not going to abide by a threatening letter that I do not believe it has any effect if we challenged it. So I believe we should challenge FWC. We have a valid permit right now that they say that's a valid permit. It's their verbiage, it's their questions. They submitted it. We still have at least 1 year left on it, and I believe that's what we should stand by.
Okay, so that's a no, and Mike
Yes,
said.
no.
I believe that we should go forward with this study, again, by the citizens putting it forward. It does answer the mail to FWC. I believe there's absolutely no reason at all to file any legal suit. We just finished an argument about trying to repair our streets and the scarcity of money to, do wholly encompassing things and to spend needlessly hundreds of thousands of dollars for a lawsuit that frankly can be easily solved by giving them a plan. It makes no sense. So I recommend this be forwarded to FWC as our.
Okay, so that's a yes from
Yes.
Mike Sable. Councilmember Shirley?
Yes.
All right. Leslie Nataro?
Yes, but there are some people in the audience that I think want to make some comments on this. We're going to ask the
That's
public.
fine. We're just going around the room, reaching our consensus, and then we'll go from there. Lloyd Roberts?
I have a yes.
Okay. Glenn Gunn?
The basic premise of consensus is nobody gets there unless everybody gets there. Yes. Move forward, get it done.
All right, and I'm feeling the same way. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this topic, because I know it means a lot to them? Yes, Mr. Gibbons.
Hi, my name is Cliff Gibbons, and I have been
If you don't mind, would you speak?
I'm sorry.
You have to turn it on, sir.
Light on.
Yes, we're going to hear you. I think you're using a howitzer to shoot at the sandfly here. This whole notion of boats is not the issue. I think what you're trying to do is going to cause more safety problems. The whole issue here is having to do with public safety. Now, if you're going to do an ordinance, it's got to be based on facts. And it's got to be based on information that you have to present to the commission. And as far as I know, and I raised this question when we had the public meeting, there's not been one incident with a boat and a swimmer since this place has been incorporated in 1952. Not one. The commission says that now there's 58,000 boats registered in Pinellas County. Not one single time has there been a boat swimmer incident on any of these beaches. So I ask you, what's bringing this about? Now, I've submitted a FOIA request to talk to Lynn about this to some degree, but I'm very serious about this, to go back and figure out how did this all come about? Because there is no need that you can show here that there is a public safety concern here to justify the ordinances you're talking about, and then littering the beaches with all this trash that you plan to do at all of these costs, to put 400-pound blocks of cement out there, and then you're going to come back and deal with this issue soon because they're going to re-nourish the beaches. And you spend all this money to put these buoys out there, and these buoys that you're talking about right now are right on the sandbar. I was out there the other day, and it's about up to your thigh right now at low tide. So what are you going to do with a 400-pound block of cement out there if kids are out there surfing and playing in the surf and so forth on the sandbar where they do? You create a hazard, an enormous health hazard, by putting all this garbage out there in the water. And that's why the commission is so opposed to what you're doing. You're making it worse by using this particular section of the code of the Florida statutes to allow you to do this. Because you can go over here on page 2, and you're going to have a real tough study here to prove this. It said, any ordinance adopted pursuant to this paragraph shall not take effect until the commission has reviewed the ordinance and determined by substantial competent evidence that the ordinance is necessary to protect the public health. You're going to have a hard time doing that when you haven't had any incidents in 70 years here. And there's no indication that boaters drive like this. I've lived there all my life by the boat. You only can go bring a boat in there when things are just perfect. You got to have an offshore breeze, and you have to be calm because you don't want to get hung up on that sandbar. And then you have no control of the boat after that. So it's only a very limited time. I've lived there and I've spent thousands and thousands of hours looking at the Gulf of Mexico. And you just don't see what you guys are talking about. It doesn't exist. So I urge you to let the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation folks do what they need to do here. It's state water. If you're going to get all tangled up in this, it's going to be a long fight. And I hope that you will give some greater consideration to this than jumping the gun and trying to put another 40 or so buoys out there that are going to be covered in sand when they re-nourish the beach anyway. So you're going all of this cost to try to get the commission to allow you to do this when there is no showing of need whatsoever. Let me ask Peter Baker, who is the president of our condominium association next door to Las Caracolas. They have 30 or so residents there, and I can tell you, everybody that I've talked to, and I go on the beach cleanups and everything like that, I haven't found a single person, once they look at this map, to agree that. I differ with your all's conclusions of that public meeting. There was no consensus in that meeting. If there's a tape, I want to see it in the public records request. There was no consensus in that thing. So please do what the commission wants you to do, and don't try to create all of these ways around it by having these boats on. That makes no sense whatsoever, and there's absolutely no need that you can show that there is a requirement to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons.
Good evening, council members. My name is Peter Baker, and I am a resident of Hillsborough County, but I have a unit at Las Caracolas Condominium Association. I am president of the association, and while I have not got a formal consensus from the board, I think in speaking to several of the members there is a concern with the additional buoys that may be placed on the exterior of our area. And I noticed that you all have got what appears to be a new version of the map of the zone, so I don't exactly know where Las Caracolas is developing in relation to your unit. It looks like then
Mr. Baker.
There's a boat zone then directly in front of our unit.
Mr. Baker, hold on 1 second. Just for clarification.
2450 Gulf Boulevard.
Okay, thank you. That's not what I was going to ask. What I was going to do is clarify what it is that you're looking at. Okay, yes,
Sure.
There are boat zones on this map. However, the outlying buoys on the ocean side, the ones that are in a straight line, those buoys exist today. We're not adding any more outside buoys. There will be 4 additional buoys placed in. So whether you're for or against it, I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of what we're looking at this moment.
Yeah, that is an additional question. I have some concerns because I know that some, it appears that the existing buoys are probably 500 feet apart, and I don't know if that is exactly the correct spacing, or whether or not the 24s that are under the current permit are still there, or you're going to have to replace them as part of this project.
Right, I stand corrected. This is where they're permitted for.
This is where they're permitted, but I would like to find out how many you're going to have to replace because they're no longer there, because they have been eliminated by tides or other things. How many new buoys are going to have to be bought and then maintained as part of this new project, as opposed to just taking all the buoys down, which is the second option that they have provided to you, which would seem from our perspective to be better, particularly if the boat zone, as you're showing it now, is directly in front of our complex. We would have a significant objection to that boat zone being in front of our complex.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments from citizens? No?
I just want to say that the parking...
Ma'am, you'll have to step up to the microphone. Sorry about that.
I'm Terry Gibbons, and I'm Leslie's neighbor. I just want to say, how many years?
Microphone.
Oh, God. Kids can usually hear me. I just want to say that in all the years I've been there, I don't know, and Leslie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I've ever seen a boat coming in, partying, and hanging out, like was mentioned. I've never seen that. And do you concur?
True, I've never seen anyone come in. The only time I've ever seen them is to pick up the kids.
That's it.
Grandkids or something like that, but it's not to come in.
It's just not,
have a party on the
it's
beach.
not a party haven. I mean, we're not talking about Clearwater.
Yeah.
We're Bel Air Beach. It does not lend itself to that, is what I'm saying. Is to just keep in mind for you all as council members. Just sort of, and maybe go from time to time if you just check out the beach and just get a feel for what really is happening, especially in the peak.
Right.
In the summer months is wherever you might have issues, but believe me, I've never, ever. And I have my kids, they swim out there, and, so if I thought there was a concern, believe me, I would be all for that.
Thank you very much. And for further clarification, and then we're going to have to take a break. We are not in a position to make a decision on whether we do or don't have buoys tonight. Okay, what this is we have a problem, or FWC has a problem with the city of Bel Air Beach, and we must respond to it, whether we want them in the future or we don't want them in the future, whatever it is, this is something that more than 3 people have to respond to, and it has to go in front of all of the city for us to hear public comments and get a little more insight on what it is and which direction the city is going for. So I think at this time, all we're doing is we're just submitting this interim plan that as we go forward, we can certainly tweak it or ditch it or whatever it is we decide that we want to do with it. But we have to give the FWC something. Does everyone agree with that?
I would like to see something. It's here, it says that on October 21st, FWC provided suggestions on our draft ordinance. Can we get copies of that?
Yeah, what that was, we had done 2 or 3 different ordinances, Fred had done them, and we sent them up there, and then when we brought them back, it was kind of back and forth with, well, do we want to do this or do we want to do that? So now FWC is, I guess, to some degree, because if you read their letter, there was some discussion, there's been a lot of discussions between Councilmember Bankert and them. He's been at meetings, he's been at their thing, and they're pretty much frustrated. But that ordinance that Fred did, was to make it a swim zone. And, we can send those, we've got them somewhere in our email. But we're talking about apples and oranges now. We're talking about something else. So those ordinances really don't, because at that time, I think we had 4 swim zones. Because all the ordinance is saying is you're going to have as an example, a swim zone from 100 foot north of 19th Street to 24th Street. That's what the ordinance is going to say.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification, there's 15 buoys in this outer string there that they're permitted for. How many are actually there? Have we gone out and done a survey there all?
Not recently, because you lose buoys all the time. I mean, you know, they could have been there 3 weeks ago, and today there could be 12 of them left, because they break away, and that's what happens. I mean, we've got the same situation on the intercoastal, and we're getting prices to put those back in.
Do we have coordinates to where the anchor is so that they can be attached to the existing anchor? Or
They don't
start
even,
over?
they don't even do that anymore. They just put the concrete back in there. You've got coordinates, but the problem is, you can't find them.
Well, over time, they sink.
They're sunk in the sand.
Yeah, sand or migrate.
Yeah, they used to screw them in, now they put blocks of concrete.
Okay, so, again, I think that, has anyone changed their mind on what we're doing? Just to move forward and so that we can further evaluate this, we still have to do an ordinance, which means it has to be voted on, and that will give all of the city the opportunity to voice their opinions. And what I'd like to do now is take about a 5-minute break. I think they can need that. Yeah, I think so.
I got it, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, before we get started, I did this our last couple of work sessions, and I wanted to see if the consensus was still the same, that we end at 9 p.m. and resume with whatever's left at a later date. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so we are now on to item 3, which is to review the sponsorship program and agreement. Would anyone like to start off with comments on this?
Just to give you a quick analysis, the Park and Rec Board came up with this kind of plan. Attorney Salzman went through it and gave us a shorter version than the previous version. So this is a draft, and really all I'm looking for is feedback from the council, if you want to go forward with it or not. That's really all I'm asking. And then I'll have Randy take a look at it and add, just another check.
All right, would anyone on the council like to comment on this?
Perhaps it'd be better if we just proceed directly with having Randy review this and then bring this up in the next work session.
I actually have a comment, but I wanted to give everyone else the opportunity. Does anyone have any comments on this?
I think it looks great. I think it's a good opportunity.
Okay. Mr. Baker, did you have any comments?
I guess the only problem I have is the city will edit any type of, speech. According to the sponsorship on the city, they have the right to edit the speech.
We can't hear you, Frank.
hold on, let
Hold
me
on, we're doing a microphone thing.
move the microphone, see if that helps. Okay, try again.
Yeah, the only thing I have a problem is, it says the city, more or less paraphrase, they have the right to edit the speech of any sponsorship
What is
under limitations.
I think he's saying by virtue of their sponsorship, do they have a right to give a speech? Is that what?
To edit the speech.
To edit the
Yes.
speech.
I can do it.
Exercise full editorial control over the placement, content, appearance, and wording.
Exercise full editorial control.
Any other comments? No? Okay, I had one, and it's a little bit controversial, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it up. I'm looking at sponsorship opportunities, and you look at that column there, And you go to 1, 2, 3, item 4, recognition of sponsorship, Bel Air Beach City sign. The council, not this council, but the prior council, said we would not be advertising businesses on that sign. And I will not vote for this if that is not, or if that's on there. I'm just completely against it. I made a commitment to the people that did not want this sign that would not happen, and I think it needs to be taken right out.
Yeah, that's something, you know, the Park and Rec Board, this was theirs, they gave it to us, so we're just trying to get it to the point where they can maybe solicit some sponsorships. And we've got a meeting tomorrow, and we can go back to them and say, hey, council doesn't want that, do you have a problem with it? And I'm guessing, you know, no problem.
Everything else is event oriented, and I just think that seeing an advertisement out there on that sign will reignite a power keg. Other than that, I thought it was a good idea. It's a great way to raise some funds and have more events. Anyone else have any comments? Great.
We'll take that back to them, I'll have Randy look at it, and we'll clean it up and get it back to them.
Perfect. We got through 1 in 5 minutes.
Now the next one.
Okay, so next is discuss charge for parking decals, and I brought this up, and so let me go ahead and explain why I added this and where I'm going with it. Under normal circumstances, most people don't have a problem paying for parking decals. However, they go to Morgan Park sometimes and they can't get in. They feel like that maybe we should be getting these for free, and that we should be using funds collected from the parking meters to pay for the decals. So I reached out to city manager, and I said, realistically, what's it costing to generate these things and get them in the hands of people? What did you?
The last year's cost was about $400, given from Pride, the state. They make it for us. And I know, Mayor, you and I talked a little bit about this. I would make some distinction about the first one's free, or I would just give them free, and we used to give them free. But, you know, the amount of money that we take in is probably somewhere about maybe $4,000. So that's 800 permits per year. And up until, I want to say, 3 years ago, we did give them free.
I was on the council that voted for a fee. Unfortunately, or actually fortunately, whenever I was going around knocking on doors, that was one of the big complaints. And I was happy that that's all that they were complaining about, was having to buy parking decals. But it was something that I said that I would at least bring up and give the council the opportunity. I didn't make any promises, but that was whenever we were trying to lower a budget where there really wasn't much we could cut, is what that's what I got out of that, was that we were reacting, trying to generate revenue and lower our overall budget by doing that. And I don't really think $400 is a lot of money whenever you're decaling everyone in town. But that's just my opinion, so I'd like to hear everyone else's. Yes, sir.
My question is, Lynn, so you just said that when the last time you checked, when we sold it for $5, we had 400 people, 800 coming by, okay. Prior, when they were free, how many did we typically give out?
some years it might have been 900, but
So it was similar.
a little bit more.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to reserve my judgment on discussing the charge or parking decals until we discuss number 5, where we're talking about upgrading city Christmas decorations, and I'd like to know where that money comes from. So I will defer my judgment on parking decals until I hear the plan for how you fund Christmas decorations.
Okay. Mike Zabel?
I just wanted to see, go through all the names. Yeah, actually, I have really no problem with that, zeroing that out, especially if we're picking up additional revenue potentially by sponsorship. And again, yeah, I saw that too, talking to people. You got the big ticket items, obviously, but you're trying to balance a budget using $400 worth of decals. That's, you're not going to be able to really do that. So my thought, just provide the decals. That's one of the things we do as a city, no charge.
Jody Shirley, you were there.
I was. And two things is that when I come in to get decals, I have a lot of vehicles. And it takes the girls, they're going to stop what they're doing. They've got to go get the book out. They've got to log every sticker. They've got to log every tag number. They've got to make decals for, it's not just the 50-cent decal. It's the time and labor associated with issuing those. I am not in favor of making any changes because of that. It's not the cost that we're looking. When you get through the budget, especially those new on the council, you're going to see it. Yeah, maybe the $4,000 generated isn't a lot, but then when you throw in parking fees that could be increased even more at the meters, you know, which I keep saying, keep testing the waters because they don't stop coming, right? You can never get a parking spot on one of the streets. So I think there's opportunity to still collect, have more revenues from parking. I just think that we're talking about a $700,000 stormwater budget, and anywhere we can get money to offset some of the overhead costs we need to.
Cost of doing business.
Fair enough. Leslie?
I agree with what Jody said. I am not in favor of giving them away free. But I mean, the cost of the decals themselves is a minor issue, but the time and effort to get them done justifies their cost.
Thank you. Frank Banker?
Well, when I moved here, the parking decals were free, and then there was a charge put on to them. I do understand the big book process, it's pretty archaic. But do we allow people to, if they don't have time to come into City Hall to get a decal, to mail their request in with a check for that decal?
You're a super genius.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
The whole thing, when I moved here, there was no charge for the decals. Then there was a charge, I guess, 6 years ago. But I don't have a problem with the charge, but is there a process if I can't get into City Hall, if a resident can't get into City Hall during the normal course of the workday, to mail in their request with a check for two decals, one decal, whatever?
Yeah.
You do that all the time. They'll scan and email their permit, driver's license to us, and pay with a credit card over the phone. We do that all the time.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what Frank was saying. So what do we do up?
He was just asking if there was a way to do it without actually going to City Hall. Is that right?
Yeah, okay.
And Mr. Reeves said that yes, they do it all the time. So, again, this is, I know that you want to have the conversation about Christmas decorations.
I agree with Jody. It's the cost of doing business. There's so many hidden costs here that we don't really account for. And the fact that you're getting emails and scanning stuff and then putting it in envelopes and mailing them to people, that's even more cost than somebody standing at the counter. So, I mean, are we accounting for that stuff? in costs, or how many man hours are being accounted for and stuff? No, I don't think we know.
Okay, all right, well, that's fair enough. Just real quick, let me kind of get everyone's opinion on what they think we should do, and then we'll move forward on it. So, Mr. Roberts?
I think we should continue with the charge. It's a personal story. We moved here 3 years ago. When I came up to get the decal and was told it was $5, I made the comment, well, that's awesome, $5 for a year. And the young lady behind the counter said, well, you're one of the few who respond that way. Because of course it was free before, it's the way I understand. You have free, now it's not free, but $5. It's just my opinion. I'm for it.
Okay. Mr. Gunn?
I leave it as it is.
All right.
There's no reason to change it.
Leslie?
Leave it like it is.
All right. Jody?
Yeah, I agree, leave it like it is, please.
Mike?
The argument was saying that it takes an inordinate amount of time for City Hall to comply with this due to logging in, tracking, and basically maintaining this set of decals. What I'm thinking about is, look, if it's free, you just come to City Hall, pick it up, and it's a minimal time for the city employees to come out, give it, they're gone. They can get back to business. So I'm going for free.
All right. And Frank Baker?
I'm for the charge and the continuing process. There's a reconciliation process there to make sure it's the resident and the resident's car.
That's a yes to continue the charge?
Yes. Yes.
All right. And, you know what, I'm kind of leaning towards what I heard about the parking and everything. I'm going to say no charge, but that's okay, 5-2. So we'll drop that and we'll move right on to, yes, sir.
Sorry, just one more question about that. What is the current status of people that park in our parking areas without a decal? Are we enforcing that, or the deputies enforcing that?
This is going to fall under general business. I want to bring that up. It may not happen this meeting, but I'm probably going to ask that we skip some things and go straight to general business. But let's continue on with the Christmas decorations.
Yes.
All right, you brought this up.
I did, like Mayor Gaddis, when he was going around knocking on doors, more than several people explained to me that they felt like the status of Bel Air Beach was higher than some of the other beach cities down the road, and they felt like our Christmas decorations were not equal to the other towns' Christmas decorations. So they felt like we should step it up. So, you know, in my opinion, one idea may be to have, and I don't know if the city, Lynn, has already looked at that in the past, but if we could have maybe a committee take a look at that and see what alternatives there may be out there. There's obviously cost. The topic that came up was like Christmas decorations that were lit in the evenings, and some of the towns have those. We do not. So I'm just bringing it forward. There's obviously costs involved with things like that. If any of our poles, they don't have electricity, you know, there's alternatives to generate power. But that was the message I was getting. Can we just step up the Christmas decorations a little bit?
Yes, sir, Mr. Gunn.
This is a great idea that dovetails with the sponsorship program. What we do is we start brainstorming a bunch of cookie jar items for things we would like to do, and then you throw it out there for sponsorships. And guess what? Christmas decorations sponsored by.
That's what I was going to
recommend. If it's cost neutral.
Parks and Rec function.
If it's cost neutral, I'm all for it.
Parking Pass is sponsored by.
Well, I will tell you that we used to have lighted Christmas decorations. Well, no, they were done by a company called Clark Sales, and over time, there was issues with the electricity on the pole. Some of the poles still have the electricity there, but we'd have to upgrade that. And then, I think it was the Garden Club gave us banners, Christmas banners, that were up there for many, many years. And they kind of fell apart, so we bought the newer banner.
Recently bought some.
3 years
to replace those. We had an issue in front of City Hall with that decoration that was there. You'd call the vendor, half the time the light wouldn't come on, you know, it'd go out. So we went and bought the Christmas tree. It's our Christmas tree, we put it up, it stays lit. So that's sometimes the problems with the lighting, because you're contracting out, because we don't have the equipment to put that stuff up.
And how much did you spend on the banners, just for
We-
informational purposes?
I'll have to go back and look, but it was, the money that we spent on the Christmas tree and the banners was what the council had given in a budget for Christmas decorations, which was several $1,000.
I was gonna say, they're not cheap, is my point, they're not inexpensive, the banners. You know, I know people love to go down to New York's Beach and they got a mermaid that lights up and all these cute little things.
Oh, the
And-
lights, those are expensive if you buy them individually.
Yeah, and people love them,
They also
but,
have plywood Christmas things that some of the businesses will do.
yeah, but they're expensive, very expensive. So, yeah, we could get a sponsor.
Sponsorship.
Yeah.
And are the lampposts, are they actually set up to support lighted anything?
We'd probably have to go back and have an electrician go through. And what happens, how that works is Tico will probably be the one, or Tico, I'm talking about Oldsmar. Duke will probably be the one that put the box up there. And then what they do is they send you a bill and you have to calculate how many watts each light bulb burns from this period to this period, and then they send you a bill after it's all over with. That's how it works.
Duke could be a sponsor.
Yeah.
Duke could be a sponsor.
Well, we contract with them, to me, that's,
Well, they,
Well, let the sewer guys do
when you talk about sponsor, if the park board moves forward with the foundation, then yes, Duke could be a sponsor.
Yeah.
Because they're going through the park board and the park board's giving us the money. That's the,
yeah.
so it's, you know, it could be a win-win for everyone. And, you know, I know I talked to, I like his name from Duke a few years ago about, hey, do you do anything? He said, I can't do anything unless it's a nonprofit. So, because different entities do different things.
Right.
Any other comments on this? Frank Bankert.
I would be totally against trying to make a buck off of my Savior's birth in any way.
What did he say, Patty?
I'm totally against making a buck off my Savior's, what was the rest of it?
Birth
Birth.
in any way
Very much.
by these sponsorships.
Okay, so my recommendation on this one would be to contact one of your Parks and Rec people and pitch it to them and see if they can, if that will ignite and turn into something.
So they have a meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say, should we just ask Lynn to take that back to them?
Yeah, I'll bring
Along with
it
the
to
sponsorship information?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
They're at 2 o'clock tomorrow, so.
Okay, we are on a roll, so let's keep going. Discuss allowing dog walking on the beach. This was brought forward by Councilmember Zaid.
Actually, I'm willing to discuss that at our next working group meeting in favor of going after the articles number 7 and 8 tonight.
All right, everybody okay with that? All right. Next is number 7, discuss acceleration of stormwater projects by partial use of reserve funds. I initially brought it up, and then Council Member Roberts seconded the idea. So I'm going to pitch it to you, Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, my take on it is that, of course, it's a budget issue to be able to accelerate that. So we're going to have to put some thought into that, which is why, you know, the 12th and 13th Street project that we already discussed today, if there are ways to extend the life and everybody's comfortable with that, with a lot of the reinforced concrete pipe, we're gonna be able to do those for less money. That's a given. So if we're able to do those projects for less money, we'll be able to do more projects faster. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
And the way that I envisioned it was, it seems like right now we're either doing one street or one horseshoe at a time. And what I would like to see is these things sped up, if at all possible. And maybe we do two of them at one time. And see how many, how quick we can knock these out without going crazy overboard. But just trying to look into the possibilities of accelerating these projects, because there are a lot of streets that the curbs and the gutters are broken and they just look bad, and they've got potholes that have been repaired on them, and the asphalt is all cracked up. And it doesn't necessarily have to be stormwater projects, but just general capital projects overall. We're sitting on how much right now?
Like 2.5 million.
$2.5 million.
And we got 400,000 of rescue money that we've already committed to, and we'll get another 400,000 in probably late August or early September. And we've got to commit that money by 2040.
Committed to storm, or is that?
Yeah, that's what was recommended.
So my question is while everything's going up, are we waiting? Are we going to ride it out, or should we actually tap into that and maybe accelerate some of these projects? Yes, Mr. Gunn.
Yeah, I buy into accelerating it to take advantage of today's dollars and costs. But here's what I see is 12th and 13th Street would be a model for how you look at this. So we've already agreed to back up, take a look at 12th and 13th Street to think about this thing smartly. And then the other thing is, we need to look down the road. We don't have a good forecast of the out-year budgets here, okay? We're still looking at this thing. We're still looking at the strategic plan. We have no really firm idea of what the out years of our budget is going to look like. We've got to make some assumptions on what's going to happen to expenditures. We need to make some assumptions to what's going to happen to revenues coming in. We need to look at what's in the hopper for capital improvement projects and new projects and that sort of thing. And then we factor in the money. We haven't done any of this stuff. So that has to be done before you can figure out the burn rate. Where do we burn through our money and, wow, guess what, when that's done, you're done. So I mean, we've got a lot of capital planning and budgeting and stuff to do before we just say, yeah, I agree with you. Let's accelerate it and take advantage of today's dollars. I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I don't think you just say, yeah, we got money here, let's do it. I think we need to come up with a firm idea of how we're going to handle 12th and 13th Street, and then we just build on that. That's the foundation for building it. Then we start looking at the other capital projects. Okay, 12th and 13th went well. We can use that as a cookie cutter plan to do these other streets. And now let's factor in, well, what other things do we going to do? What are the out years? 2 years from now, 3 years, 4 years from now, and what's the burn rate of that revenue? That's all I'm saying. So I agree with it, but I think there's a lot of stuff besides just waving the wand and saying, okay, let's go forth and do great things.
Council?
Yeah, I just want to add, this should be Monte Carlo. Specifically, I agree with you. Sometimes it does make sense. We're running at about 8% inflation, forecast to go further. Housing, unfortunately, it may be in a bubble, so tax may drop. What I will get to is there's a time and place for accelerating the projects, but you can't do it unless you know exactly where you're going revenue-wise, and that's what we need to go back, hit the budget, hit the strategic plan, and then put in, say, Monte Carlo planning. Okay, what's a 5%, a 6%, 7%? What can we afford under each one of these, and what is our threshold for paying? How fast can we accelerate, if at all?
Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to it. Actually, when I submitted my wish list, it did include road pavement and stuff as well as stormwater projects. So I think both of those are very closely tied together in all of our projects that we're going to go forward. So, as I said at the beginning, it's tied to the budget. I think we can get creative with the budget. In a previous organization I worked for, when a new governor would come into place, and he or she would say, we want all these organizations to cut 10%. They didn't really have a lot of forethought specifically about what that meant. So oftentimes we had to push back a little bit and get creative and things like that. But, we survived. So there probably are some things in our budget, I think, that we probably could cut, and some other things that we can take advantage of that. But I haven't looked at it in that much detail by any stretch. But it's worth looking at, for sure.
I think this is something that maybe we should, every work session that we have, we should devote a certain percentage of our time to this topic. Budgeting, what projects are important to us, which ones, in what order they should come, and are we spending our money effectively? We owe it to the community, and I think also that we owe it to the community just to kind of fix it up a little more on what we're doing, rather than just sitting on this money and while we're watching. Honestly, everything that I have invested right now is losing money, and if it's sitting in the bank, we're also losing money. The numbers are the same, but it's not worth as much. So I think it's probably in our best interest to spend some of it anyway. Okay, so what I will do is on the next agenda for a work session, I'll make sure that this is brought up, and I'll try to come up with some topics that we can discuss, and then leave it up to you guys. We'll see how it goes. Any other questions or comments on that topic?
No.
Phillips, great idea. Mr. Baker, do you have any comments?
I would just be cautious of spending money right now with this inflation bubble. I agree, each project has to be looked at, aggressively if it's needed. But we'll probably be collecting, if things go this way, we'll probably be collecting 5% on that $2.5 million in another couple of months with the Federal Reserve increasing rates as they've been. So that's over $120,000 a year. That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Now we're to general business. Before I get started, does anyone have anything that they would like to bring up? Any old business or anything way?
I wanted to ask Lynn about the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding.
Yeah, I've been pretty constant contact with Duke, and that was the latest email I got back from her on Friday, and I responded to her and told her, yeah, I want the credit. We got the credit for Bellevue Estates on it, so I want the credit. So she's trying to get it tidied up. We did get an estimate for, it went from 1 million to 1.3 from Duke. So I'm trying to get her to reduce that estimate a little bit. So we'll see where that goes. But I just want to kind of give you an update on where we're at right now. And that's a good thing. If we can get $200,000 in credit, that's pretty good.
I'm just curious, when do you think it will be complete?
Well, if we could get them started, we can start on the first phase because we've got $1.4 million roughly already targeted. In October, you'll get another $930,000. Well, that would take care of first through Causeway. That would take care of that. And because, and that's kind of where I was going with it, try to get these prices firm and then try to move the first phase on and then go as far as we can with the $4 million. And when that runs out, I do expect, based on what's happened in the past, I expect some of the big C mayors will go back to the county and say, hey, you didn't give us enough money, because I know Indian Rocks Beach can't go through their whole town. And that was the goal of the whole project, was to integrate.
And that's the thing, is that they're expecting us to do the entire run. But if we don't have enough money, are we on the hook for it?
If we tell the utility to go further, but I'll give you an example. Indian Rocks Beach is, I forget what street it is, they're only going to this point because that's the money they got, and that's as far as they're going.
And the county is okay with that?
Yeah. I mean, happened last time, same situation, you can only go so far with the money you have. And I think, maybe next time you're at the mayor's council, Bill Queen's there, have a chat with him, because he's the one that went back to the county to get the 35 million that we got to split.
Now, in the event that it's not completed, is there another round of funding?
That's what I'm hoping that will happen.
You're asking for it, but what I'm saying is there a contingency plan?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
No, we've got the money guaranteed to us.
Yes, but it's not enough.
No, not to complete the whole city, no.
Okay.
It's about $1 million, right now it's about $1 million short.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else?
One question, status of cables over Gulf, the Spectrum cables.
They're still working down the street, and I talk to them every week, so. I got 2 issues at the south end, all that's left down here is the tension wires, and they say they don't belong to them, they belong to Frontier, and I've made a couple phone calls, he hasn't got back to me. We had the same problem in Bellevue Estates with that, you know. The tension wire across 22nd Street.
I thought we were, it's not Verizon, it's Frontier. Aren't they undergrounded everywhere already?
Yeah, but here's the problem. Frontier, and this is what happened in Bellevue Estates Island. Frontier undergrounded everything, but guess what they didn't do? They didn't take the copper down. They left it there. So, you want them to take it down, I want some money for it. And that's unfortunately what happened.
Because that's a book resource. That's a book resource.
Well, there's nothing going through it, and I've talked to them about that. I got them to take it down a couple places, but for no money, because I claimed that the poles were crooked, you know, but you still got to argue with them. Frontier told me there's they have no facilities on Gulf Boulevard. Because I went to them and asked them that question.
Well, I saw their buried fiber map, and it shows that we're done.
Yeah.
That everything's
No, I know
complete in
they
this
are.
area.
But they want you to pay to stuff down. But those tension wires, we had that argument that was that tension wire that went across 22nd at Bayshore. And finally they took it down. I guess they got tired of me calling them.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Lloyd Roberts.
I have just 2 areas I'd like to pursue, but of course I'm not going to do that unless I have support or authority of the council to pursue those. One is, ever since I've lived here, coming across the bridge, it has always confused me as to why we have 2 different speed limits. So I would like the opportunity to chat with Bel Air Bluffs, a leadership team over there. Of course, no decisions will be made. I just want to discuss it with them and see what opportunities will avail themselves to us, and I would come back and tell you guys how that conversation went. And obviously there's 2 choices. It could be 35 all the way across the bridge back and forth, or it could be 30 all the way back and forth. I'm assuming we would prefer it to be 35. I guess guess would be with the citizens. But again, I just want to sit down with them and chat and see what opportunities are there. You know, maybe we'll have like an arm wrestling tournament, and whoever wins gets their choice, or something like that. But I'd like to pursue that. It's okay with all you guys.
It's just in that zone, right? Because
32 and a half.
the corporate history on that, Lynn Reeves, was the condo people were the complainers there, not being able to get in or out
Right.
their parking areas.
Yeah, we had that discussion. Let's see, the bridge was done in 2009. We had that discussion with them. There was no interest to increase their speed limit whatsoever because of the conflict.
Just as a history.
No, yeah, I talked to Liz a little bit about it. So, is that okay with you guys? I can just talk with them?
That's fine.
Okay. The second one had to do with the infamous changes that have occurred down here with the traffic lights. So I'd like an opportunity to contact Pinellas County and whomever else, just to talk with them to find out what additional alternatives may be available. I have studied the traffic plan that they put together. It's a wonderful book, about 18 inches thick, so that was exciting. But I think there may be some opportunity there. The feedback that I've gotten from the Bel Air Beach citizens mainly has to do with the blinking left turn yellow light that went away. You know, if you're coming from the north to the south, that was there before. Now that it went away, it just seems like sometimes you sit there for like 2 hours. Of course, it's not 2 hours, but it seems like a very long time. And it gets more frustrating, feedback I've gotten from the public, that when you're sitting there at the red light and there's zero traffic coming from the south to the north, where if the blinking yellow light was there, you would have turned, 60 seconds ago.
That was the second lane that changed that. You can't have a blinking light too.
That's correct. That's correct.
And it takes longer when there's a pedestrian trying to cross, right? So they hit the crosswalk, it delays the light a little longer, so it's just part of it,
Yeah, and there's other issues.
I don't mean to, be flip about it, I drive it every day. but
Right.
It's just part of it, it's just part of it. If you're, I don't know how else they can improve it, but go ahead.
Well,
And
we've already asked that question to the county, what you're asking. Because it's 2 lanes together, there's no blinking.
They won't get rid of the second
No,
green, straight
right.
lane.
They claim
It's
that is
it's
part of
okay,
the
but I will say that it's gotten better.
They did slide it over.
It's definitely, I've noticed more people are using the I guess you'd call it the outside lane to make the left turn, and people are, they've trained themselves to actually be a little respectful and not try to race to the end of the intersection or where the merge is. The only thing that my only complaint is that Pinellas County intentionally timed that light to make sure that you're stopped at every traffic light. If you're stopped here, you're stopping all the way to Tampa.
I have noticed that as well.
Every single traffic light.
Just gotta drive faster.
Yeah. I hear
It's
that.
still yellow.
That's funny.
85th percentile.
So Pinellas County outsourced that study, and everybody probably noticed that, so it wasn't done in-house. So they have a, traffic engineering firm that did the study. So I'll probably call them as well, just to see what their thoughts are. So,
And you can jump ahead of the line. You don't have to go through a higher power. You can actually call I forget what the name of the department is, where the signaling control is at.
Right.
You can call them directly and complain, and they'll listen to you because they just want to shut you up and fix, whatever it is to make you happy.
With the counties we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, and they've offered, just so you know, they've offered anytime the council wants to go up there, they'll take you on a tour of that.
It's really cool.
It's pretty
I
neat.
think we need to do that.
It's really cool. In fact, let's just say that it hung up, and you are sitting there for, let's say, 5 minutes. If you've got their number, you can call them up and they'll flip the light for you. And
Nice.
make it go on.
Okay.
I've had that happen a couple of
Yeah.
times.
Well, you know the problem is it's broken.
It's that quick and that responsive, they can change it.
Motorcycles
that
have a
quick.
problem.
I was gonna say, you've never ridden motorcycles.
All right.
Okay, does anyone else have anything they want to bring up? Okay, so I have something that I want to bring up, and it's concerning Bel Air Shore. Lynn and I met with Commissioner Bloom, and we began discussions on what to do about our differences between the two communities. And what he brought up was interesting. It wasn't, in many ways, his complaints are the same complaints that we have. Part of the problem is you've got non-stickered people that are parking there and nothing's happening. You've got people that are breaking rules up and down the beach. They're riding the bicycles, the e-bikes. They have legitimate issues and concerns. So I immediately voiced my concerns concerning the umbrellas. And I told him that that's really, we don't want these giant canopy shades. We just want single pole umbrellas that you can attach to a chair or you can stab in the ground or carry around with you. I said if you would work with us on this, then maybe, maybe we wouldn't have so many problems between our two communities. So we discussed some ways to that maybe we could resolve some of these issues. Obviously, the parking lot is a big issue for both communities. We don't like people over there that are creating a liability for us, and they don't like people over there that just don't belong there. But at the same time, they do want to be able to use their property. One of the things that we discussed was a possibility of gating, of actually putting real gates in, and then figuring out some way to activate the gates where maybe you had a large gate and you had a small gate, so for people on foot, they could access that way, and for people in cars, then they would activate the gate. I started thinking about that option, and right off the bat, beyond the expense of the gates and the electronics, I was thinking, well, now you've got to provide everybody in Bel Air Beach with something. So let's say you had to purchase a key fob. Well, they don't want to buy a sticker now. So who's going to pay $50 for a key fob to use that? So then I started thinking about other options and or other things that we could look into. We've discussed this in the past. In fact, Jody, I believe you've even brought it up, and I believe, Lynn, you have too, which was towing. So I asked him, how do you feel about just going ahead and working out a deal with a towing company and giving them free rein? If you pull in any one of these 3 accesses and you see a non-permitted vehicle, have at it, tow them away. And he said, I would have no problem whatsoever with that. The other option, another thing that we discussed was increasing the patrols on the beach. But I think that's something later on down the road, and this is kind of where I'm going with this. I told him that we wanted umbrellas, and that was really our biggest concern. Obviously, the same concerns he have are more secondary because we don't live there and we're not seeing what's going on up and down the beach. But I'm thinking that there's an opportunity to maybe work out a deal where, okay, let's revisit tagging umbrellas. and getting our umbrellas back, just the umbrellas. We're not asking for anything else. And then to pairing with that, increasing the patrols on the beach so that when the police come by, it's not every 12 hours, it's maybe every 2 or 3 hours. And they see the umbrellas, and if you don't have a tag, well, then you can't have that. At the same time, they can patrol the parking lots. We would have the towing companies coming in, and we try to make Bel Air Shore what it always has been, more of an exclusive area, but it's an area that both communities would use together. I'm trying to work out something with them that maybe will benefit both communities, and I wanted to bring this up because ultimately I can't make this decision. Everyone here is involved, and so I'm looking for some feedback. What are your thoughts?
I'm smiling because, yeah, I think you got it. You got it in, you're establishing trust. I put my full backing behind you in these efforts.
Thank you. Jody?
You know, it sounds like what I've said all along. It just doesn't seem like it's a big deal. It just takes us a little effort on both parts. I think the parking is easily handled with having a tow service under contract. They're happy to tow any vehicle that's out there because they get the tow fee.
They're making the money.
Yeah, and they put their signs up and you sign a contract with them and it's the best deal going. Costs us nothing, you know. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm in support of if you can get something. I don't know about tagging the umbrellas and all that, the logistics of that sounds a bit complicated, but yeah, I think it's an easy fix.
Well, the umbrellas, let me go back to that a little bit. We discussed tagging the umbrellas, but Bloom actually believes that if we can get the 3 access lots under control, the majority of his problems will go away. Was that the way that you looked into that?
And we're looking into the cost for gates, like he mentioned.
Yeah.
I made some contact. We'll see.
I just see
They're
that as being
expensive.
a nightmare, yeah.
He did say he was, you know, he was interested in sharing the cost.
Yep.
So I asked that question.
And the deal is with that is, it's all, we could easily do gates. Splitting it between the 2 communities, that's no problem. It's whenever you have a way to get in. If you give somebody a code that they're going to share with their buddies, it's going to be abused. If you have RFID or key fobs or anything like that, it's very expensive. And we think the parking stickers are a nightmare for administrative services. Imagine what it would be to maintain that. And what if someone loses one? Then you've got to figure out what number it is and you have to deactivate. So the more, even though whenever we were discussing it, it sounded like a good idea on the outside, I went home and I thought about it more and more. It's like, I don't think so. And also, from a legal perspective, I'm afraid that it may be challenged by our own residents. Well, why should I have to pay $50 to use deeded access?
Well, and I have a distribution facility that has maybe 30 drivers. It's a nightmare. That has automatic gates and, you know, it's just a nightmare. Their gates are always broken. They don't have the patience to wait. Just, you know, all the problems that go with it.
I think that the towing company and the increased patrols would probably be our best bet.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
One of the bigger problems down there, and just this past Friday, I was talking to the new patrol officer. He was in the parking lot. He was shooing an unregistered car. Another one pulled in a 5-minute conversation we had. without a beach sticker. But talking to some of the Bel Air Shore residents, they're more concerned about the electric bikes that are coming in, the Uber drop-offs, the taxi drop-offs, residents or non-residents parking at our city hall, looking across the street. I hate to say this, but I think your first idea, I know it's a costly idea, is probably the best solution, and that was actually brought up by 2 residents of Bel Air Shores, having some type of a double gate access. I don't know what the cost would be. I do understand about giving a key fob out, or giving a code out, or whatever like that, which could all could be changed monthly, quarterly, or whatever.
Thank you. I tell you, probably not a bad idea just to maybe give us a legal opinion on that. As far as the gates go, and maybe you could get back with us.
Understood?
Mr. Gunn?
If you go with towing, it's a reversible process, okay? If you don't like the results, you back out of it, okay? Very, very low implementation costs with respect to gates and fobs, and implementation is like, give it to the towing company. They'll figure it out. They'll put the signs out, and we got to sign a contract or a term and come up with terms that we can live with. No maintenance costs are involved with towing. And the word gets out there that they're towing your car. I'll tell you what, nothing strikes fear in the heart of an American driver than somebody, they're out there towing cars. And they'll take care of that. No maintenance costs, and allow the towing companies to monitor the market situation. They'll be happy to do it. And or anybody walking through the parking lot, a resident, sees a sign, sees a car without a sticker, hey, I can call up a towing car and he'll be here. And I don't have to say who I am, where I am. I can just say, hey, I'm off in the beach access parking lot off of 14th Street or wherever. There's some cars parked illegally here. Those guys will be there before you can.
Well, that sounds easier than filing a complaint with code enforcement.
They always write you out.
I mean, you just need to have your house towed. That's all.
Yes, sir.
I was always in favor of the umbrella tag, but you know what, I think in listening to this, if we implement the towing factor, I think if we come up with an agreeable option between Bel Air Shores and us regarding the height of an umbrella, as an example, no tents, whatever we agree to and they agree to, but an umbrella that doesn't exceed 6 feet and a diameter of, pick some numbers. So I don't think we need to tag them. If we have a reasonable umbrella approved number, and the people in our city would know what that is, because we would tell them, you can use umbrellas now, and here's what they need to look like.
Say city of, or property of City of Bel Air Beach or something.
Right. But I think coupled with the enforcement of the parking area, then maybe we don't really need it. I think the only people using the beach then would be 99.9% Bel Air Beach residents.
Well, another complaint he did have was about the Ubers, the Uber drop-offs and the wagons.
Yeah.
And I've seen those. I haven't seen them so much lately, mainly maybe because there's just no incentive to go there for the Uber crowd. But I think that the towing is a nice olive branch, and let's see what happens.
If there was something, what's the current situation with Bel Air Shores and where they meet for their meetings? Where do they go?
Bel Air Bluffs.
They made it Bel Air Bluff.
Okay. Do you think they would consider our facility more efficient for them, closer, better? As an olive branch type thing, if you had that in your pocket?
Maybe so, but I don't know if they're really interested in doing that. I think that they're content right where they are. Would you?
Yeah.
Is that what, the way you feel about it too?
Yeah.
It's a small room, kind of a more intimate environment, and you know what, I can ask them though.
They did use ours in the past, and then
And then, yeah.
things got,
So they may think that's a good thing,
yeah,
you know, maybe something to close the deal a little bit, I don't know.
people complained about them using it for free.
And that's, you know, it's always, there's always controversy. And maybe for now, it's best to leave that one alone. Let's start with towing, if you're okay with that. And let's just see what they say. And at least they'll understand that we're trying something to make a difference. Is there anything special we will have to do to contract with a towing company?
We'll have to contact one. I'm sure they have some type of contract.
Since it wouldn't cost us anything, it wouldn't require any bids, is that right?
I'd want the opportunity to just review what,
Yeah.
it depends of it all. It depends of it all. I'd want an opportunity both to look at what arrangements exist in other communities. Are there any kinds of codified provisions you need in your code in order to be able to do that? In some communities, that is the case. So what I'm hearing is a discussion about moving in a direction which affords me time to work that in the background as well. I can't unequivocally tell you, here are the 5 boxes you'll need to check as I sit here today.
I know we can tow, because we can tow from the park line.
Right.
Because we had a couple of people that parked cars in the marina. And all I did was call the sheriff, he called whoever it was, and told him that. So, we have that capability. But I think it would have to be an agreement
Between both, right? I may very well require we negotiate our interlocal agreement.
Probably.
Ms. Roberts?
What Glenn was referencing, I have seen parking lot areas before where there's a sign there that says, you know, you will be towed if you don't have the proper, and here's the towing company, name and number, which would make that kind of make it fun almost. I go up there every day. Summertime.
Can I add, the issue of the e-bikes, it's an issue on our sidewalks. I mean, if you walk Golf Boulevard, people will zoom by you on those e-bikes at 30 miles an hour on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we need to address that in ordinances, not only on the beach, but,
we did it on the beach already.
yeah, but also in town.
It's going to get worse because these companies are springing up, and their goal is to get from Indian Rocks Beach to Clearwater Beach, and eventually we're going to start seeing the older ones and the batteries die, and they just drop them. That's all they do. They just leave them where they are. You see them all over the place in other communities. Okay, we're almost finished. The last thing that I want to bring up is the sheriff's patrol is, I know it's rare that they are going up and down our beach, but they are traveling our beach in a full-blown SUV, four-wheel drive. We are already losing all of our beach. I can't imagine this doing anything but more damage to our beach. Is there anything, can we give them a little nudge and say, we want you to patrol, but we want you to patrol on the ATV that we have over here in the garage, which is yours.
I got a call into Captain Leonard, he's been out. I called him last weekend about that stuff. It's something with his family, so I'll talk to him.
Well, we're going to ask them, eventually, we're going to ask them to patrol more, and we don't want them doing it in that big SUV. In fact, I believe someone was ran over recently.
Someone was just run over again for this is
Our beach?
No.
No, it's Clearwater, wasn't it?
It was Indian Rocks.
Indian Rocks.
Yeah. By sheriff.
Okay, that's all I have for now. We've got the dog walking. You guys want, it's only 5 after 9, you want to tackle it right quick?
Yeah.
Okay, just briefly, during my walks around, obviously campaigning, found that, and I was kind of shocked, Bel Air Beach is primarily, we have our grandkids, but a lot of us have, the furry kids too. And some of them would like to obviously use the beach, but let me kind of clarify this a little bit. We don't want to open it up to the public generally, hey, it's a dog-friendly beach, let's all pull up. No. Just looking at maybe from 7 to 9 in the mornings, so it really just kind of locates it to owners. They're leashed. People already do walk their dogs on the beach, but one, it makes them legal. Right now, they're all violating the law, but it allows them to do that. They're picking up. As far as, the arguments say, well, you got, feces all over. So, well, we got raccoons, you got coyotes, they're already there. But now you have a responsible owner on a leash walking from 7 to 9, no other times. And, so they all enjoy the beach. They're off the beach, back home. So I just like to bring that up, maybe put that in front of, the public, allow them to comment during a council meeting and go from there.
So you're suggesting specific designated hours for walking
Yes,
the dogs?
because if it's 24/7, then we have problems from other communities. 7 to 9, or, I'm just proposing a 7 to 9. Yeah,
The beach is it's usually just residents. out there.
Exactly, and it's a less travel time, it's just the residents, it's usually before work or after work. We can narrow that down, but giving our residents a place that they can go with their, their furry dogs. But they're still responsible for them, obviously, that gives them that option.
Anyone like to weigh in on this? Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm always amazed that, dogs can't go in hotels, beaches, but we'll use the dogs to find people in collapsed buildings, sniff out bombs, drugs, etc. But as a dog walker at the Pinellas County Shelter, and I do other things too, I've seen so many irresponsible humans. I do the monthly beach cleanup. I picked up dog droppings on the beach. You can go right across the causeway. There's a dog beach to the right. They have dog litter bags. People don't use them. It's a cesspool sometimes until the tide comes in and washes it out. I love dogs. I've always had dogs. And like I said, I would love to bring my dogs on the beach. But I wonder if we passed an ordinance, and Mr. Moore might have to research this, if a dog bites somebody, attacks somebody, are we responsible since we created an ordinance?
Short answer, no. There's a strict liability statute in Florida statutes for the owner of a dog. A dog is simply considered property, and so if your property harms somebody, then you as the owner of that dog are responsible, not the owner of the property as an invitee, unless you do something just incredibly careless, like you just leave sausages lying around and, in a kid's playground or something. That, there's always a hypo where you can get to liability, but I would say as a general matter, there's already a strict liability statute for dog owners.
And Florida is a strict liability state for dog owners. I understand that, but I'm thinking you see these leads today anywhere from 4 foot to 12 feet. And I guess all that would have to be modified in an ordinance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banker. Anyone else? Linda?
Yeah, I just called up some of the places. So Clearwater, North Beach, Fort DeSoto, Honeymoon Island, Paso Grill, Picnic Island, Apollo Beach, Gandy Bridge, Bicentennial Park. My point is, are you creating another attractive nuisance? Hey, guess what? Bel Air Beach has a dog-friendly beach. And guess what? All of a sudden, you're going to have dogs everywhere. And the hourly thing is great, but how do you enforce it and monitor it? So my thing is, I think you're going to open a can of worms with this thing. I love dogs. I used to run mine on the beach. I used to do it across by the bridge there. But I'm concerned about that, and how do you monitor it? And so I guess it's all or nothing. If you want to do a dog beach, do Dog Beach, but how do you monitor it, 7 to 9 or 5 to 7 or whatever, when we're already talking about sheriffs not being able to enforce certain things in certain hours, who's gonna do it?
I'll add for your consideration on the legal side of it, one of the complicating factors as it relates to dogs on the beach or other animals on the beach is the mental health or physical health support animal. And whether or not people make spurious claims about it, your ability to enforce is really limited to asking two questions. Is this a support animal? And what support function does it serve? And you can't say like, prove it, show me, make it do a trick.
Exactly.
You know, and there's no national certifying body that has an official license you carry if it's an emotional support animal or otherwise. All of us here, having lived through most of the pandemic, know how easy it is to order just about anything on Amazon. People get vests that at least invoke that language, and then should anybody attempt to enforce, you're met with very obstinate refusal and an assertion that this is my emotional support animal. And so as you look to enforce, that is a complicating factor you should be aware of. We're here talking mostly about recreational use, and mostly for residents during certain hours, but you get somebody at, let's say, 10:30 a.m. who says, oh, you know, this isn't my recreational dog, this is this, there's not a lot you can do.
Yes, Leslie?
I am not in favor of allowing dogs on the beach. There's a dog park at the end of the causeway, and there's Sand Key Park. There are plenty, and all the other dog beaches, there are plenty of things, and I think it just opened up a can of worms for the mess left by the dogs. I don't think there's any reason we need to take that step.
So where do we go with this?
I did, interestingly enough, I was talking to some people this past week, and they had been to Jacksonville Beach, and they had exactly the same hours that you had just referenced. 7 to 9 in the morning. It was typically used only for residents because of the timing. I get what you're saying, Glenn, about the enforcing. What's the penalty if you violate? They had also installed the Backy systems in particular locations so that dog owners, I think most of the dog owners that I even see walking on the street on Gulf Boulevard, they'll have bags, you know, picking up their dogs, gifts, and stuff like that. So, and something you mentioned earlier, it's something that could be reversible if we tried it, and it seemed to not be working, we could change it. Now, how difficult would that be after that? I have no idea.
Is this an ordinance, Lynn? It is, isn't it? So it would be an ordinance change.
And I'm just gonna tell you, a study was done several years ago. 60% of the pet owners don't pick up.
Really?
60%. You can give them a bag, you give them the world, and they won't pick up. And, you know, I'm not, you know, for or against it. It's just, we get a lot of complaints about dogs on the beach. And then we send an officer there by the time we get there with a dog. And just what Randy
Walk
said.
your dog on the beach, go for a walk.
Uh,
Just if you want to walk your dog on the beach, go for a walk and just be done with it.
Yeah, but people, you know, like Randy said, we've got people, there's 2 questions the sheriff can ask them. That's all you can ask them. You
First he's
can't-
got to catch him.
Huh?
First he's got to catch him on the beach.
Well, that's
with
the
dog.
problem. I mean, we can't, you know, the staff can't, we can write a parking ticket, but we can't do anything about dogs on the beach, even if we see them.
Maybe we could charge for dog stickers.
Yeah, but I mean, my point was, I mean, they're doing it right now, and yes, it's illegal. You're not gonna catch them. You're not gonna be able to get a cop out there. I'm just saying, look, allow it for our citizens, limited time. You can put a time limit on an ordinance, give it a tryout, actually bring it up to the people, you know, see what the feelings are with a bunch of dog owners. But they could have that ability.
I think what you're going to find is it's going to be a little more than 50% of people that don't want it. would be my guess. Everyone has dogs in this city. I mean, they're just all over the place, but I also see all the time people complaining about other dogs doing their business in their yards. And that's proof of what Lynn just said, is the issue. You got good dog parents and you got bad dog parents. And I think most people's, the way most people think is, well, if no one sees me, I'm not picking it up.
Anyway, no, I just appreciate your time. I appreciate you letting me bring this forward to you.
I do, because who we get the complaints from, or the contact, and that's regular. So, if you want to explore it more, I would talk to the contact people, because they're the ones that make the first move they call. It's,
And the short-term rental people, they're probably the worst, not the.
well, yeah,
not so
because
much
they,
the-
I know that one at 3200, I've been there because we told them, hey, don't let your people take their dogs on the beach. And they do it anyway.
Just Roberts. So just to clarify, so if somebody from Bel Air Beach went to the 6th Street parking facility, that's not us. So they brought their dog there to watch the sunset. Of course, that would be past the morning anyway. So that's Bel Air Shores Beach.
It is, and that's us not being very good neighbors.
Well, you can take your dog to the access. It's just, you can't go on.
And I have seen nice pet owners, just like you're talking about, that come to the 6th Street with their dog on a leash, but do not go to the beach. They just stay right there like.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
Know several people that do that.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add? No? Okay. Well, that's it. I appreciate everyone staying and let's getting through all this. It was really cool. We need to have another work session. Go ahead, Mr. Gunn.
I just had a thought about your umbrella thing and the tags. What if with your parking, and I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm not thinking about the durability or the cost or whatever. With your parking sticker or some fee you pay, you get a key to a locker in an access area that has Bel Air Beach belongs. You're allowed to use it whenever you want. The thing is, you just put it back in the locker and lock it up when you're done.
That comes to liability.
I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't know if it becomes a liability as much as it becomes, I'll just use an example. If Ms. Shirley goes and says, well, I got 5 teenagers, I don't want to be hassling with this, I'm going to take this one, there's 5 of them there, I'm going to take this one home, and then you're constantly losing things, to say nothing of liabilities.
I'm not thinking it all the way through, I'm just saying, hey, we need to just, we're trying
To
to
come up with some sort of a solution,
Yeah.
some way to identify the residents of Bel Air Beach so that whenever the police are patrolling and they see a bunch of weirdness going on, or they immediately look they're not looking at us, they're looking at
And I recognize the beach accesses and parking is a particular issue, but I do want to caution you in the broader sense as we have these discussions to remember that our beaches are public resources. I've had this discussion in other communities, especially in the midst of the pandemic where people felt like too many others are coming to our place and this is for us. The beaches are a public resource, and so those others are ostensibly welcome, whether or not we actually feel that as residents in our various communities. So, whether it's one community trying to close Indian Rocks Road because too many people are using it as a shortcut, or any of these sorts of dialogues we have, those are all public roadways, public beaches, public parks, and we can't make that distinction between residents and visitors alike. It's an important thing to note. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be having this discussion, you certainly should, but just being mindful that the ultimate resource that we have.
So is it an issue then if we come to an agreement that our residents can put an umbrella up if it has a tag from our issue from our city?
You can have resources limited to residents in certain ways, and there's a correlation there between taxpayer funds and the like, just like you can have resident decals and resident, or in some places that have indoor facilities, there's like I lived in Dunedin, The Dunedin resident could use the fitness facility for free. Non-Dunedin resident was like $10 a month or something. And so you can make those distinctions, but just ultimately saying, you know, you're not welcome on this beach because you're not one of us. You know, or you came here. I see your tag. That's an Alabama tag. What are you doing on our beach? That sort of thing. It happens, unfortunately, but it's not the way it should be.
Okay, I appreciate it. Mr. Gunn?
Has anybody read through that endorsement pamphlet? There was some great information in there that kind of sheds a light on a lot of issues going on.
Yes, and I believe that Randy owes us a read-up on that, and you're supposed to find misinformation if there was any in it.
I appreciate that, and since we've got the composition of the body here, what I'm understanding, there was an individual, I believe in Indian Shores, who circulated a reading of the beach renourishment thing. The one thing that I think is important to get on the record for you folks and your residents alike, this council doesn't control beach renourishment. And I don't think you're trying to, but your residents will come to you and say, why are you trying to take my land with an easement, or why haven't you gotten this to handle? And you're going to the county, to the Army Corps of Engineers, and several tiers of bureaucracy between you and sand getting on your beaches. Or that you could unilaterally control it, I think you would have handled it one way or the other by now. As it relates to that interpretation, it has been circulated to me. I skimmed it. I didn't review it in great depth. If you'd like me to do a point-for-point review of it, I'm happy to do that. I wasn't sure what level of attention you folks would like me. In my other communities, in some other communities I've worked in, manager says, hey, be aware of this. That way, if somebody comes to us and says, it says this, why aren't you doing that? Be prepared to speak to it. Others won't want a memorandum. I just wasn't clear, from a work product standpoint, I don't want to fail your first expectations, and if I'm not clear on what the expectations are.
I think what my goal of bringing that into this council was to give everybody the opportunity to read what was being circulated to the people that, one, have already signed easements, and two, are being steered away from signing easements. And I can't really say that I'm for or against it one way or the other, because there were some good points in the document. It would certainly scare me and make me not want to sign it. But I think at the end of the day, the Fed is not going to give us the money, not this go round. We've missed it. And that leads me back to Pinellas County. I feel that it's their responsibility to maintain these beaches. If they're not willing, if the Fed is not willing to give us money, then it comes back to Pinellas County, because all this tourism is coming in, they're collecting all this tax revenue, and they're not maintaining what it is that makes this place so great, which is having an awesome beach, making it safe, and protecting the wildlife and the vegetation on our beaches. And they're also not protecting us. If they allow these dunes to wash away, then we're all in danger if we have a big one. So that's kind of where I'm leaning now, is I'm ready to start working with the other mayors and show up at a Pinellas County meeting and say, okay, we tried it your way. Now what's next? What else can you do for us? Because this is only going to get worse, and the Fed is only going to continue demanding more and more. If we give in this one time, they're going to expect it. God only knows what else they're going to expect. So that's kind of where we are right now, and I'll be having that conversation with them this week.
Mayor, just to close that loop, from where I sit, I can certainly maintain an awareness of the document. If we get to a point where you need something more detailed, please let me know. My only concern being, of course, I'm the town attorney, not as you've used the term, the Fed attorney, and what I say it means might be totally different than what the attorney on their payroll says it means, and just something to be mindful of, or for that matter, the county. I'm not saying I'm incapable of giving advice. I'm certainly capable, but when you're talking about what does this mean, how does this program work, how is it administered, that's not a regime that we ordinarily operate within. So if you want me to do that, I can do that. But
So that'll be a special project. I hear you.
That was not my intention, but I like where you're at.
I learned a new term, maintain awareness. I like it.
All right, if,
Any action items? What came out of the 12th, 13th Street? We tabled this thing. What's it, it's got,
well, I think the goal is to get a requote. Is that what you took out of
We're gonna
that?
have to redesign it a bit. We're gonna have to redesign it, and we're gonna have to get another bid. And I'll talk to Jewel about that. And what I heard, you know, it doesn't seem that you have any problem with us doing some more campering on some of the other streets.
I took it to do some research and then talk about redesigning.
Yeah.
And we can do that in-house, right?
What?
The video, we have the equipment.
No, we don't have the equipment, but we have a company that is on a contract with them.
Okay.
And we've got the money in the budget installed, so.
I was going to ask to borrow your cell phone.
We're going diving.
All right,
I don't think we want to do that.
Was that it?
yeah, I just wanted.
I have some line.
Okay,
It was
great.
great, they relined everything.
And we need to, the only thing that we had left, which is not even on the list, was we were going to go back and start working on the infrastructure projects and budgeting. And do we want to have another work session, or do we want to cool it this month? Or, well, this month is about over, isn't it? We're halfway through it. Thoughts?
So we had one this
Don't
month.
everyone volunteer at once?
We'll have the next council meeting, the first
Okay,
Monday,
we'll
right?
have the next council meeting, and then we'll have another work
Next
session.
session next time.
Okay, well, if
That's good.
everybody's good with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So we'll-
Second. Again?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You're still coming tomorrow, right?
Oh, you guys diving in there.